everyone, and welcome to another exciting commentary podcast. I'm Captain Logan.
And I'm Dan.
And today we're going already to Star Wars Return of the Jedi. We just got done doing the last one, but that was so much fun, and Dan and I were ready to jump right in and do it again. So today, Return of the Jedi. Dan, would you like to do any preamble at all before we start talking about this one?
This may be the Star Wars movie that I watched the most when I was a kid. For whatever reason, this was just the one I rented the most, the VHS-wise, before I ended up buying them on DVD later on or getting for my parents for Christmas or whatever. I like this movie. I think it's the weakest story-wise out of the three of them. But there's enough, really iconic and great moments in this one, especially, I love the duel between Luke and Vader on the Death Star with the Emperor present. I just like the Emperor stuff paying off in general, so
Yeah.
all of that was cool.
This is also the one I think I watched the most when I was a kid. Eventually, I started watching Empire a lot because I love that so much. So I have kind of a skewed perspective now. This is the one I go back to the least now. So I think I will find that I know it really well, but it's been a while since I watched it, so it'll be kind of fun to do it again. If you've never watched one of these with us, or if you have, I'll remind you, we do this as a podcast and as a commentary simultaneously, so if you want to watch the movie with us while we're talking about it, of course, we're going to watch the entire film, we're going to talk all the way through it, and you can do that by pulling out your DVD or your Blu-ray or however you want to watch it. I should mention, and I didn't do this last time, that we're doing the special editions that were on DVD, not the most recent special editions that were put out on Blu-ray. Of course, those are a little bit different, and I'm sure the running times are different. So we're not doing the original theatrical versions as much as we'd like to, because not as many people can get their hands on them. Thanks, George Lucas. But anyway, so there's that. But anyway, so if you want to watch it with us, get it past all the menus, get it to timestamp 0, and you can watch it along with us. Or if you want to listen to it just as a podcast, we will do our level best to provide as much context for the scene as we can as we're talking. Dan, are you ready, sir?
I think so.
All right, everybody, if you're going to watch it with us, press play right now.
Dun, dun, dun,
20th Century Fox. Dun, 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 dun.
See, they don't leave the X illuminated on these movies like they do for the X-Men.
No,
I wonder why.
It doesn't have anything to do with X-Men. I kind of expected them to maybe do that just to be funny when the X-Files movie came out, because Fox also has X-Files, and they totally could have done that.
Oh, they totally should have done that.
Yeah, I don't think they did, but I don't remember. That movie's not especially memorable, Dan.
They should have played the...
I'm talking about the more recent one. The original, the first X-Files movie was pretty good, but
okay.
The more recent one, what was that? X-Files, I Want to Believe. It wasn't great. It was a little lackluster for me, but anyway, Star Wars.
And we open with another opening crawl that kind of sums up the stuff that we didn't see between Empire and Jedi here. Which is a kind of recurring theme with all these movies, really, at least in the original trilogy. There's some time that we don't see, which we've talked about how interesting that is. And we get to see Luke as a full-fledged Jedi Master in this movie, which was one of my favorite things about this movie as well. Seeing Luke kind of fully realize his role as a Jedi in this movie, I really enjoyed that as a kid, and now too, because Luke's my favorite character of the piece. So.
If I were going to make, Dan, a modern-day throwback to old adventure or sci-fi serials, I would add a thing between each installment that Star Wars didn't do to separate myself and make it awesome. And that would be, instead of an opening crawl, I would film a bunch of like fragments of scenes from an installment that you didn't see. And I'd be like, last time on this thing, and then I'd show you all these things that you didn't actually see, and like, now we'll see how they get out of the trap.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, they kind of serve the same purpose.
They do.
That's a good point. And we're opening here
with a Death Star. Whoa!
Yeah, very similarly to the first two movies, as we discussed, with the Star Destroyer shot from down below there. I love the design of the Imperial shuttles, by the way. The three-prong design looks so cool. Those ships.
They remind me a little bit of some shuttles that were in a couple of early Star Trek movies, actually.
Oh, cool. Interesting.
But they came out really close to the same time. So.
Right, yeah.
So, as everybody knows, this movie was originally supposed to be called Revenge of the Jedi.
Yes, it was, and that's an interesting choice given that the Jedi aren't supposed to be at all about revenge in the first place. So I think it's kind of good that they ended up changing the title.
Yeah, I think so too. And I think the title fits a little bit better because the whole trilogy is about how the Jedi are gone and people think that this is a outdated religion and that it's not about anything.
Right,
And
exactly.
then they come back and they prove to the galaxy. Well, we don't really see that happen fully, right? But I mean, we know that they're going to kind of prove to the galaxy the Jedi are back, and
Right, exactly.
so it's a more appropriate title. I think the reason a lot of fans liked it was because it sounded like really edgy.
Yeah, I would imagine so. And some of the original movie posters, you can find them online that say Revenge of the Jedi look really cool because you got like Vader and Luke battling with like this red background and the revenge thing kind of suits the tone of what the poster's going for.
But I don't think that it ultimately suits the
Right,
movie.
exactly. The marketing,
I
I
mean,
guess it suited it, but not
I
the movie
suppose you could
necessarily.
make a yeah, I suppose you could make the case that like Luke Skywalker going to the dark side for like it looking like he might go that way, and then like you don't know. It's a title that would make you wonder what the end was, right?
Hmm.
But then once you got to the end, it wouldn't fit anymore.
Yes, exactly.
So it would
Sure.
be a tease, but not the kind of tease you want when you get to the end, because then the title is lying. Because the Jedi don't really get revenge.
Right.
Not real. Not really.
I mean, there is some sort of vengeance involved in that, like, the Emperor is killed, but it's not really a Jedi that ends up killing the Emperor by the end of the movie in the first place. It's kind of all about the redemption of Anakin Skywalker. So, um,
Yeah, so it ultimately wouldn't fit. And I think one of the best choices they made for the prequels was calling that third movie Revenge of the Sith,
hmm.
because they get to have their cake, they get to use that finally, and then you know that title actually sort of fits that movie.
It does, yeah. And I was glad to see the revenge word come back too and use in some sort of a fitting way.
Did
Um,
you hear that? I said something positive about the prequels, Dan.
yeah, and Revenge of the Sith, I think, is the most solid of all of them. I mean, I have problems with it,
Yeah,
obviously, but
not that's not saying a lot, but yes, it is definitely. Anyway, so about this,
and we've come full circle back to Tatooine, which is cool.
yeah.
I like that we're visiting Tatooine, but a different place that we've never been before. We kind of see the root of the scum and villainy that's spoken of by Obi-Wan in the first movie, and kind of see the man responsible for all that, which is kind of cool.
Which is good because you and I have talked about this off camera. Where like there's a, or maybe you said this in the commentaries too. I don't remember. Where there's a lot of the Empire is evil, but we don't see all the evil stuff they actually do.
Right.
And so it's nice. I mean, these guys, I guess, aren't really part of the Empire, but it's nice to see the dark underbelly of this. There is some horrible stuff going on, and if only we didn't have this Empire, maybe there wouldn't be as much of that.
Right, and the thing is too, like the Empire is all about law and order and like promoting what Vader's perverted sense of justice is, and the Emperor's too, I suppose. But dirty stuff like this is still allowed to happen. Like they don't, there's no feasible government oversight here. In
Well, and there's a lot of corruption because
exactly.
remember that like Vader was working with what's oh man Lando
Yes, and bounty
in
hunters too.
bound yeah and it was all okay well if you do this for me then I'll let you keep doing your horrible things and then I'll give Han Solo over to Jabba the Hutt. So I mean like they're all in collusion just because Vader is using people however he needs to use people. So like it serves the Empire to have this kind of stuff going on so that they have people that they can hire to go kill people. I mean remember you had all those bounty hunters.
I mean, the stormtroopers are completely useless, so they got to hire someone competent.
So
the,
that's a really good point.
these Gamorrean guard costumes looks great, and the Twi'lek guy here. Um, oh man, I used to know his name off the top of my head. Oh, Bib Fortuna, that's his name.
Oh, that's right. I remember that. I remember that from action figures,
Yes.
Dan.
All the costuming, especially in Jedi, now that we've gotten to like the final installment of this trilogy, everything looks extra fantastic. Like that's the one thing I don't think anyone can slight Jedi for is how great the special effects look, even compared to the other two, as good as the special effects are.
I think it's really consistent. I
It
mean,
is.
I think any of the problems that this movie have are just it's hard to write a conclusion to a story like this.
Oh, no doubt about it. And
And I think it struggles a little bit in that.
I think it does too, but I think it mostly sticks to the landing, which we'll talk about once we get to the end. Especially with the Luke stuff. I think most of that's resolved pretty well with the Emperor and
And that's
stuff.
what matters
Exactly, yeah.
most, right? Like, you're not gonna destroy that with Jawas. Like,
No, definitely not.
or not Jawas. What are the things everybody
Ewoks,
hates?
yeah.
Ewoks, thank
Yeah.
you. Ewoks. Sorry,
No, fair enough.
hold on, I'm getting in my Star Wars mode. I don't have a Star
They're
Wars mode.
both
I'm getting as close to a Star Wars mode as I can get.
Jawas and Ewoks are both really short races, so I can see how you might mix them up. And we're on Tatooine right now, where the Jawas are from. So,
Okay, so are we? Is this the movie that has in the special edition like the really irritating chick that sings?
yep, you're about to witness
That
it, my
oh,
friend.
that's about to happen, isn't it? Yeah. This is the one that I least like to watch special edition. I feel like the first two they didn't change to it. The second one there's a lot that's really easy to even just straight up dismiss or not notice. I mean, the first one there's some added scenes that you kind of that I kind of wish weren't added. A lot of people feel that way. This movie they straight up just messed with.
They did, and I wish they added in some of the deleted scenes from this movie. And I don't know if you've ever heard about them. Like, there's the introduction to Luke originally was supposed to be him building his new lightsaber, and you see him because that's like an ancient Jedi tradition, and it's like takes a lot of willpower to build. You build it with the Force. You kind of like if all the parts float in the air and come together. That's why it's so difficult to build. And I would have liked to see him do that because I'm about to get really Star Wars nerdy on you here, but I like Luke's lightsaber design in this movie. I really like because it's very similar to Obi-Wan's hilt, and the one that he used to have obviously was Anakin, so it's sort of similar to the way Darth Vader's looks. So it's sort of like, in a way, a symbolic transition from him being kind of a novice, didn't know which side of the Force he wanted to go on towards committing towards the light side, I suppose. It's got more of an Obi-Wan kind of look to it. The only difference really is some differences in the handle and stuff. So I don't know. I kind of wish we saw that happen if we're gonna add in scenes, you know?
I don't know why they didn't re-add stuff like that since there were really questionable things added to the first one.
Yeah, exactly.
And that would have been a great introduction to him, especially like man, I kind of wish that was in the movie in the first place. I mean, I haven't seen the scene, but like just thinking about comparing that to you seeing his progress, right?
Right.
Like comparing that to where he was when he couldn't lift the X-wing on Dagobah,
Right.
and then like getting to the end when he got so angry with Darth Vader and lost that fight because he couldn't control himself. Like where he is now from in between all that would have told us a lot, Dan.
It would tell us a lot, but at the same time, I'm of two minds about it because the introduction we get to him here is kind of ambiguous as to what side he's on in the first place,
Oh,
which is
and that's because he's wearing black
yeah,
and
he's wearing black. You see him here trading R2D2 and C3PO, two principal characters, for personal gain, and then you see him walk in with this hooded black cloak on. So at the beginning of the movie, if like, you're a Star Wars fan, never seen this, you're going to the theater, you're like, "Oh man, is Luke evil now in the time that we've left these characters? Did Luke turn to the dark side? Who knows?"
can I say something horrible? I never put two and two together and realized that that was supposed to be ambiguous.
Yeah.
And
It's
I think
tough
it's
because
just
you
because
always
I saw
know.
this when I was a kid, and yeah, and I mean, like, it's just I don't remember the first time I ever saw this movie,
Mhm.
really, and so that never even occurred to me because I know what happens.
Right, exactly. It never really occurred to me either until I watched it later on and got some sort of distance from it as, a kid that wasn't 11 years old, you know?
Boy, and I always like this opening, but that makes it a lot better. I mean, I feel like this is really consistent with the tone of the end of Empire,
Oh, it
right?
is, definitely.
Like it feels like we're kind of in the same movie, and it's just a progression, right? I mean, I know that there's space in between them, but there's not well, there's not as much space as in between the first two, is there? There can't be
No, I don't think so. I
because
don't,
Han Solo has to not be in that carbonite too long.
yeah, I don't know my star dates very well. Like, there's a timeline that existed before the EU got wiped out that defined all of that stuff, like how many years were in between all the movies and stuff. So I'm not sure exactly how many years there are, but I don't think it's a long time.
So you have never seen this scene without all of this weird added stuff.
Yep.
Wow, Dan, man. I don't mean to rub it in, but I do not envy your age sometimes, pal.
No, and this is an instance where I'm totally with you. This scene is one of the weirdest things I've ever seen. Like, I remember vividly this one time when I was watching this movie, and my father infamously doesn't like Star Wars at all, and he like walked into the room when I was watching this, and he's like, "What on earth are you watching?" There's like some alien like shirtless dancer singing a really weird song. He's like, you need to shut off whatever this is."
The I'm just looking at this shaking my head. I think the biggest problem with it is that it doesn't really sound to me. I can't deal with it. It doesn't strike me as something that anybody would have written without the without the back history. It feels like what you do in the '90s with this.
Yeah, exactly.
I think is the problem, and that's when this was done. So it feels like a thing really added in hindsight. This needs to feel like something that they did in the '70s or the early '80s, and it doesn't.
No, not at all. Agreed.
Or something just completely disconnected where it has it's ageless, right? I don't know, man. That just feels like the silly '90s way to do that. I don't know if that makes any sense at all, but that's just how I feel about it.
No, I mean you can
It feels
practically
very retroactive is the word I was looking for.
right,
Very retroactive.
right. I mean you can practically see Boba Fett's eyes rolling behind his visor when that scene's going on when they flash to him those couple times. He's even like, all right, why is this happening?
Well, and like just the CG and stuff, it just doesn't fit.
Yeah, exactly.
It doesn't
Especially
feel like
when the
watching the
practical
same movie.
effects on Jabba look so good.
Why would you do that? At the very least, come back and do it with
Yeah,
puppets.
exactly. And we
It
have
really seems like they're just trying to come up with an excuse to give us to make us pay for it again.
oh yeah, definitely.
Anyway, sorry, I'll quit complaining about that. Good.
No, I was just gonna say that I like the proactiveness of Leia in this kind of situation here. Uh, she puts a lot on the line here to try to get Han out of the situation.
Yeah, and I think it's a good reveal. I don't think anybody would have expected it.
I didn't expect it the first time I saw it either. As a kid, I was like, "Whoa, it's Princess Leia. That's cool."
I like that the subtitles say that he's speaking
Yeah.
Huttese.
This is one of my favorite C3PO interactions with or scenes, I guess. Just the way that he's like so um not privy to the way that this like corrupt atmosphere works. He's still trying to be like prim and proper and diplomatic about things. I don't know, like putting him in this situation is really funny to me. Like he's got the green goo all over him right now and he's like totally doesn't know what to do with himself.
It's also kind of fun to see him actually do the job he was originally supposed to be programmed to do
That's
for
very
getting
true.
the prequels. I mean, he's a translator and he is being a translator.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know that he does a lot of that even before this.
He doesn't do a whole lot of it. He just kind
I
of
guess he translates R2D2.
that's true, yeah. He's kind of like the Han Solo to R2D2 if he was Chewbacca, I guess. That kind of character that doesn't talk and is wittier than all the other characters sometimes. The Chewbacca costume in this movie looks a little bit different to me, and I've always thought that, like the hair on the top of the head
Oh,
looks a little shorter.
okay.
I don't know if I'm crazy, but
You might be right.
it still looks great. Don't get me wrong. I just thought it looks a little bit different.
Well, I just can't believe that a couple minutes ago we saw Boba Fett on screen and you didn't lose your mind.
He just
My
did
God, it's Boba Fett! He's standing
he just
around.
did the coolest nod at that bounty hunter ever.
Only that actor could pull that off.
And then we see Lando there in a Jabba's palace outfit, and
I guess if they hadn't done that, it would have been a somewhat better reveal with Leia.
that's true. And,
Like, 'cause you're not going to be that surprised after you. I forgot all about that. Um, I don't know. It almost would have been cooler if he'd stood there and not pulled it, because the only reason he pulls his mask down is so the audience knows who he is. Like, why would he do that?
That's true. Yeah,
So I don't know. Like, it would have been cool if he left it on because you can see a little bit of his face, so the audience can either catch it or not catch it. I don't know. That would have been cool.
that would have been cool. And the one thing I have to question about it is how did like you figure out like why and how all the other characters are there in that situation, like are able to infiltrate the palace. Like obviously Leia's being an imposter, Luke comes in later. How did Lando get into that situation?
Well, he just had that creepy face mask thing on, and people are used to things looking weird, and so he just walked in.
Yeah, I guess so.
But they seem to have pretty good security. I mean, they have this giant door and
Yeah,
stuff.
exactly.
Like,
Bib Fortuna receives everyone that comes in, so I don't
nothing
know.
gets past Bib Fortuna. He's like the doorman in the Tick versus the Tick. He's like, my doorman senses are tingling.
No one gets past Bib Fortuna except for a Jedi that does the mind trick on him, and then he goes, "I take you to Java now."
And I guess Lando
Yeah,
Calrissian.
that's true.
But, man, there is not a cooler last name than
There
Calrissian.
is not.
That is pretty cool. I love Star Wars names. I also love making up Star Wars names as we discovered last time.
Yes, they are all very well named except for some specific ones like, Darth Maul, who's very obviously, Darth Bad in Spanish. I think Vader means something, or it means father in a language, which I suppose is on the nose, but it's not as obvious as like, I don't know, us being American, like a lot of people here speak Spanish. So I just knew Maul was bad, and I was like, oh, he's Darth Bad.
Well, yeah, I mean, Vater with a T is German for father, so I'm sure there's a language that's got a D in there.
Right.
But yeah, but Vader just sounds really sinister, so you don't necessarily think of it.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, Darth Maul, yeah. Um, but I don't know. I still like the name Darth Maul. It's just then you think about it and you're like, oh,
Yeah.
is Darth bad? He's Darth bad.
Harrison,
Darth bad it is.
yeah, Harrison Ford is acting the crap out of the scene right now with the hibernation sickness. I don't know. I think he's doing a really good job of selling this right now.
I also used to have the action figure of Leia in that outfit where the helmet comes off.
Oh, cool.
It's pretty neat.
See, that was probably
Well, apparently Jabba the Hutt is Santa Claus.
a.
and
I've always loved the way Jabba laughs and talks.
then Harrison Ford and then Han Solo's like, I know that laugh. It's Santa Claus. Am I gonna get some presents? Oh, I'm delirious from the Corvine.
Man, Jabba, they did a really good job of making him look absolutely repulsive, didn't they?
Yes, they did. Yes, they did. And also, I think they do a good job of not deflating the terror of him being in the carbonite by so early pulling him out of it, because he's like out of the frying pan and into the fire, right?
Yeah,
Like
exactly.
he's gonna immediately, about to go be, and they make such a big show out of it that everything still feels pretty dire.
It does, especially like when you have Luke coming into the situation here. Like he's obviously more powerful than he was before, but you can't really gauge how powerful exactly he is when he gets into the situation when he's on the barge and they're about to throw him into the Sarlacc pit. Because like Luke of the training level he had in Empire would have died in that situation, right?
Yeah.
Like you don't know that he's able to force jump and like pull his lightsaber out of R2D2 through the window and stuff like that.
No, and that's a pretty good reveal too, isn't
It
it?
is, yeah.
That all of a sudden he's able to do all this stuff. And again, it's really well set up. I mean, we're surprised, but in a good way. It's not like, when did he learn how to do this?
Yeah.
It makes perfect sense.
And this is one of the things that's kind of interesting to me. Like, obviously they couldn't have done like this, the kind of stuff Luke does in this action scene. They couldn't have done that sort of stuff with the Force with the budget they had in '77, and even with some of the special effects. I mean, Star Wars itself was groundbreaking in the original one in the way that it used special effects, especially for the spaceships and stuff. But you see the kind of escalation of the things that Jedi are able to do that like goes to an absurd extreme in the prequels, right? I mean, I
Yeah.
think we hit like the top ceiling of what I'd like Jedi to be able to do in this movie.
Well, and also, as lots and lots and lots of people have said before, it's nice to not see Jedi doing all that stuff constantly, so that when they do it, it's a spectacle.
Right. And I kind of forgot here too. We just saw Luke choke out those two guards. Like, that's a Vader signature move too. That's another kind of throw off to the audience, saying that maybe Luke has gone down the dark path.
Because we don't know what his intentions are right now.
Yeah, and the way they opened
Now
that
he
scene,
probably didn't kill them.
right?
He might have killed them. I don't know, but he probably didn't.
He's almost got like the Emperor's hood going on there. It looks very similar.
Well, yeah, and he looks kind of dark and sinister because with the hood over him, just the way the lighting is, he looks almost like he's got those dark eyes.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the way that we saw him when they opened the door, kind of the dark, shadowy figure walking out of the light into this place, very ominous introduction to him.
So it's a little bit odd to comment much on subtitles, but I'm just laughing at the things that they're spelling out, and then the time of the alien languages, and then the time that they just say, "Oh, he's speaking Huttese."
Yeah.
Like, why do you spell some of it out? I don't understand. Anyway.
I think because in the original movie, like they wouldn't have given you a subtitle for what Jabba's saying
Oh,
unless
he
you
did they do sometimes. You know what? As soon as I said that, I realized what was happening.
had.
Oh, so mind trick is Huttese. You don't have any. You don't have a hot word for mind or trick. All right.
One has to wonder,
Blah 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 blah. Mind
right?
trick.
And one has to wonder, Jabba. I mean, from subsequent material in the prequels, we know that he's come into contact with Jedi before. But just in the context of this movie, having never, if you're a viewer going to the theater, never seen anything that was made after this, in '83, I think this was '83.
I think so.
Um, you gotta wonder, like, Jabba must be a pretty powerful man to, that Jedi mind tricks exist. That's such a, taboo thing within the Empire.
That's a really good. I'm glad you said that because we questioned last video the folks that like should probably know something about Jedi and seem not to.
Hmm.
And so it is good to see. Well, and it also tells us something about his age. Tells him he's been around a long time.
Right, and Hutts famously live very long lives, so that would make a ton of sense. Not that they spell that out in this movie or anything. I'm just saying from subsequent material I've read, I know that.
But it's kind of cool the stuff that I'm picking out of the scene while I'm watching it that you're saying, oh, I only know this because of subsequent material, I'm kind of assuming it even
Right,
before you say that. So like when he says this is Jedi mind trick, I'm immediately just assuming, well, he must have dealt with Jedi to know that.
right, exactly. And this Rancor monster looks fantastic here.
I cannot watch, especially this movie in particular. I cannot watch without thinking about how difficult some of the Lego Star Wars levels are.
Yeah.
Because here in a little bit, we're gonna get into the Sarlacc pit, and they back the camera off so freaking far that I can't even see what the heck I'm doing, and I can't watch this without thinking, oh man, I fell off that side of the barge, and I fell off that side of the barge. And, yeah,
Those
anyway.
games are fantastic. I have very fond memories of playing the Lego Star Wars games.
Yeah, that was my biggest criticism was that level. I couldn't see anything. It's annoying.
Especially since how, like, because we're on Tatooine, the desert planet, how bright everything is.
All right, come on, Luke, stuff that convenient bone in there. There you go.
See, I'm so glad that that Rancor monster isn't completely CG because the practical effects look so good,
Yeah,
and you can
yeah,
tell
they
like
could have changed it out. I'm really glad they did. But part of the issue though is that the fact that they use any CG creatures in this at all make it inconsistent.
yeah, exactly, and I can definitely tell the way they're filming this just knowing the minimal amount of things about filmmaking I know. Like we're never able to see the full Rancor monster and Luke in the same frame, obviously, because the Rancor monster when they filmed it is a lot smaller. It's a model puppet probably, and they had like hands and legs that were made here to shoot in the frame with Mark Hamill when he was on
Right.
screen. Um, So I mean, that's kind of a detriment, I suppose, to the style they're doing here. But I think it's convincing enough that you buy it's really that big.
Yeah, I mean that kind of thing is, with movies from this age, especially, have always been convenient enough to me. I just want to see it the way they could do it,
Yeah, exactly.
at the time, and there's charm to that, Um,
Oh, of course.
I mean, like the robot, the Ed whatever number it was from RoboCop was shot exactly the same way, and that was quite a bit later.
Oh,
That
cool.
was a few years after this.
There's Boba Fett again, standing by Jabba's side.
See, now you're just gonna keep doing it because you know that if you don't, I'm gonna say something about it. Oh, come on, Dan. He's not gonna get much screen time because he's about to get eaten.
I
So,
know, and the way he goes out is so pathetic. So pathetic.
see, that guy's crying because he knows that here in a little bit. But
But the cool thing about the expanded universe is they say that Boba Fett is the only man to ever crawl out of the Sarlacc pit, half alive, kill it, and then fully recover and become the leader of an entire warrior race. That's why he's so awesome.
which sounds a lot more impressive before you realize that they did that just because they had to get him out of there somehow.
Exactly.
I mean, okay, so it gives us a reason, so we're not just like, you spit him out.
Yeah, that's true. I think a lot of the alien designs, well, I mean, some of the designs are consistent from the ones we saw in the cantina in A New Hope, but the costuming looks much better to me. Like even we saw a I forget the name of the species off the top of my head, forgive me, but the species that Greedo is the guy that Han Solo shoots in the cantina in A New Hope.
Yeah.
Like
Hmm.
there's a member of his race that we saw earlier prancing around when that song was going on, and I think the costume just looks a lot better than the one they use in A New Hope just by virtue of the budget they had. Oh, and there's some banthas there. I wonder if those were added in post or not, like special edition.
I don't know. Looking at this right here, this all looks very CG.
It does.
Very CG. Could we not have that at all, please? Because it's just inconsistent. It doesn't fit with the rest of this.
And it's
Oh well, whatever.
yeah,
I think it's really I think it was a cool idea to have C3PO have to translate this horrible thing that's about to happen to them.
I,
Where like
yeah,
he's their friend and he's having to do that, and then he's pausing like, oh no, this is terrible. It kind of makes it sound a lot worse when when you just see that like everybody's in a bad place.
right, exactly. I mean, even C3PO, like if this plan doesn't go off as planned, he's in a terrible situation being the translator of Jabba the Hutt for the rest of his droid life.
Well, I love how exaggerated all this is. Like it. You're gonna be. It's gonna take 1,000 years before you're digested.
Oh man, that would be the most painful thing in the world.
Well, then you think about that. And the first thing you think is, man, I'm gonna be digested for 1,000 years, and then you're like, well, you probably won't be alive for more than 5 minutes.
That's true, yeah.
And then if I remember right, it'll be interesting to see it again because it's been a long time. If I remember right, in the special edition here, they make the thing look a lot more like a spinning meat grinder or something. Or do they not? Am I remembering it wrong?
They give it
I seem to remember something where suddenly the teeth just start spinning around or something. Am I wrong about
I
that?
don't remember the teeth spinning around, but I remember that mouth that they added in with the tentacles is definitely CGI. They added in later.
Yeah. I know originally it didn't look quite as menacing actually.
Hmm.
I mean, there's some things that you could say are technically improvements, but
Oh yeah, definitely.
yeah, maybe I'm wrong about that. I don't know. I, for some reason, remember from when I was a kid that like it just starts spinning around like it's a garbage disposal. Wouldn't that have been hilarious? You're like, that is clearly man-made. There is nothing in nature that does that.
Well, I mean, it would be fitting because that's basically what this thing is, right?
But
It's
yes,
a big
it
garbage
is a
disposal.
giant garbage
It's a
disposal. That's
really
right.
inefficient one that takes 1,000 years, but a garbage disposal it is.
Well, you find out that what Jabba knows that he didn't tell you is that we just haven't gotten the repairman out to fix it. It's not supposed to take long.
I love how sure of himself Luke is in this movie. That's like my favorite thing
Yeah.
about it. It's just so.
Well, it lets you see how much range Mark Hamill has.
Oh, exactly. It's just so like awesome as a Luke's my favorite character. As I keep saying over and over again. Like you see him go from like the naive farm boy to this in 2 movies. We're on the third one now, but the progress of 2 movies, I suppose.
Yeah.
And cool little tidbit about the green lightsaber. Do you know why we have a green lightsaber in this movie?
I don't, Dan.
The reason why it's green is because the blue sky there that we have, the lightsaber was originally supposed to be blue because Lucas, originally just planned to have 2 colors for them, but you couldn't see the blue contrasted against the sky, so they just changed it to green so it would look better, special effects
Wow.
wise. So them changing the special effects to make it look better is the reason why we have more than 2 colors of lightsabers.
So if it hadn't been for that, we wouldn't have all those other colors.
Potentially, I mean, Samuel L. Jackson says that the only reason he agreed to be in Phantom Menace and subsequent prequel movies is because George Lucas let him have a purple lightsaber.
I still don't understand why it had to be purple, but all right.
I'm a big fan of the purple lightsaber because that's like my favorite color.
I just don't know why that was the
Yeah.
simulation. Like, why that color? Why?
No, Boba
I
Fett
mean,
just
I know,
died.
I know he likes to. Oh, sorry. Well, a moment of silence. I don't. Yeah, it wasn't very long. I know Samuel L. Jackson. He said in a lot of interviews that like he likes to have input on his wardrobe, and like he likes to pick what his hair is and his hats and all kinds of things. But like, so that was the thing. He was like, I have to have input. Is purple? Why purple?
I don't
I mean,
know.
it looks cool, whatever, but like you didn't want anything. You weren't like, okay, this is what my outfit should look like. No, purple lightsaber thing in post that you're not even gonna see on the set.
That's
All
true,
right.
yeah. George Lucas, I think, let most of them pick out their hilts too. I remember seeing behind the scenes stuff of Ewan McGregor and Phantom Menace, and he picked out what Obi-Wan's lightsaber would look like, at least until after Attack of the Clones, where he had to have the one that he has in A New Hope eventually.
Jabba's death is somewhat gruesome.
It is, yes.
Once again, that goes to what you're talking about earlier with Leia being really proactive. You know, it's kind of cool that like she's in shackles and she still totally kills that guy.
Yes, it is very cool. Especially
It's,
since like she would have been doomed to a life of sex slavery, the
with
Jabba the
that
Hutt.
guy,
Oh
yeah,
God. I like
I don't even
that,
want to think about that.
and
I don't even want to think about how that works.
right? And I like
Yeah.
I like that Han is being very proactive here and trying to save Lando, even though he totally screwed him over in the last movie.
Oh, that's a really good point. Oh, so there's no explanation as to why he's not blind anymore?
He's still blind.
Oh, is he?
Yeah, Lando was just yelling shooting directions at him.
Oh. Well, he says I can see a lot better.
Yeah, I mean he's just not completely
Oh,
up to
okay, he's just
speed.
not
Yeah,
totally healed yet.
right.
I thought that was them just sweeping that under the rug for a second. Okay.
And Leia getting some more stuff to do, which is cool. I mean, I'm just happy whenever she gets stuff to do, even if it's in action scenes, because this is
Because she didn't get a lot.
yeah, even in Empire, like besides the romance scenes with Han, she didn't even get a lot to do, so it's cool to see. And it's a cool reminder there too, for people that saw Empire when Luke gets shot in the hand there. That a nice little callback to the end of that movie, I suppose, reminding us that
There is a lot of callback and bookending going on.
yeah,
Like I had forgotten that Luke grabs Leia and they swing across just like they did in the first one.
yes, that's true.
Like that comes back. Okay. And clearly that's not an accident. Like they're doing that stuff on purpose,
Oh,
I
of
think.
course, yeah, I totally agree with you on that.
Oh, and also it's cool because it's her. Well, I guess I'm sitting here thinking about this. No, it's still a him rescuing her thing, isn't it? So it's like they get out of that. Like he comes to rescue her, and then he kind of rescues her, just like he did the first time.
Right.
Except she has a little bit more to do with her own rescue this time.
Yes, exactly. Both of them are a little bit better at rescuing themselves and each other.
Well, it doesn't take as long.
Yeah.
They don't like get past that and then suddenly wind up in a garbage chute with
That's
the
true.
walls caving in. Every time I see that scene, I want to like pause it and then do the '60s Batman announcer voice of like, will they get out of this alive? Because Batman did that same scene, except it's with spikes on the walls, but like that exact same scene for Death
Oh,
Trap.
interesting.
That's the big one I remember from when I was a kid. It's like, holy crap, I gotta tune in tomorrow to find out whether or not Batman gets crushed by these spiky walls. That was always the creepiest one.
Yeah, they could have been like same star time, same star channel. It would have been great.
That's right, Dan. That's right. I have wanted to go back into so many things with Death Traps and just do the '60s Batman
Right?
voice. And I think there's a whole video series in that. Nobody steal that. Someday I might do that. There's a whole videos. I shouldn't have told anybody about this. Somebody's gonna totally rip that off and do that.
I know, right? They'll be like the evil emperor here and just steal everything and
Yeah,
be bad
because you all
people.
know that's the coolest idea you've ever heard.
I love the design of the royal guards here, the guys in the red robes that we saw.
I do too.
They're
I've always
awesome.
liked that. I had an action figure of them too.
There's a whole like apparently I've never read it, a comic book series about those guys that's really good. Like goes
Oh,
into their
cool.
backstory and like what their training is and stuff. I'd like to read it sometime.
You know what else they should do? They should do a story about the guys with the big, like, spinny electric things from Revenge of the Sith. I don't understand what those guys are. You know what I'm talking about? Those guys that just walk around and they have these big, huge electric poles that, like, spin
Oh
around real fast.
yeah.
Like, what are those guys?
I don't even think George Lucas knows.
I don't know what those guys are. They're cool
They
looking,
are, yeah.
but somebody should do it. Somebody should also do that.
See, it's very cool that this actor who played the Emperor was down to play him, three more times in the
Oh, I
prequels
know. Yeah.
because it's perfect. Like you don't need a guy that's young looking to play the Emperor. Like he looks fine even in the prequels comparatively to how he looks here because he's so covered in makeup here.
Yeah, well, he looks about the right age by
He
then.
does, yeah.
So when we see regular him with not the messed up face yet,
Yeah, and
I don't love the way they messed his face up, but
right.
like once we see that,
Yeah, Ian McDiarmid is a great actor. I'm surprised I haven't seen him do many other things besides this.
I've never seen him in anything else.
And this is one of the saddest scenes in all of Star Wars here. Yoda's passing, man. This hits me in a place. See, the puppet
And once
here,
again, it's kind of I'm sorry, I was going to say once again, it's kind of parallel or not paralleling, but like it's kind of doing the same thing that the first Star Wars movie did. Well, yeah, it is parallel. Where he's got a mentor who goes within the first 20-30 minutes.
yeah, exactly like the same thing that happened with Obi-Wan. You're right. And I was just going to mention that the puppet looks more decrepit than I remember the one in Empire looking in
Hmm.
the face and stuff. Like they added some like bronze detail on like the eyelids and like the creases in his forehead and stuff. It just makes him look a little bit more worn down and stuff.
I also think that and I don't know if it's on purpose or if it's just natural somehow, but like I feel like Luke looks older.
He does, and I think this is the movie where he had this is post the facial reconstruction surgery for Mark Hamill that we discussed last time. So I don't know if it's just a matter of Mark Hamill aging or what we had talked about with him getting his face reconstructed. Maybe it's a combination of the two.
Part of it might be just makeup and wardrobe
Yeah, that's
too,
true. Yeah.
because I think they might have done that on purpose. Is just kind of a visual, symbolic thing about his progressing and changing.
Right, exactly.
Because he doesn't seem anything like the same. I mean, he's the same character, but he has a very different kind of demeanor right now than he did at the end of the second one.
Oh yeah, definitely.
He's very calm. He's very focused. And I think Yoda in this scene completely gets that he is finally ready for all this, or potentially anyway.
Right.
Because I mean, how different is this from before? Don't go try to save your friends. To you must confront Vader.
Right, exactly. And I think Yoda trusts that he's ready, but it's the same sort of thing where temptation is always there, as we see in that scene by the end. Um, I think it's very telling for Luke's character and such a big thing for him as a character that Yoda realizes that even though there is temptation there, he trusts him enough in a way that he didn't last time. Um, it's a big character thing for Luke and to tell the audience some things about his character since we last saw him too.
Yeah. Well, and perhaps there's also just a little bit of kind of desperation. I mean, Yoda's about to
That's
die.
true as well.
He's
Yeah.
just told us that, and so you know, you must confront Vader. There's nothing else I can do for you. So I mean, I've done the best I can do. I'm giving you everything I can do. There's nobody else to train you now. Who else is there?
There's
The rest of
nobody
the
else.
Jedi are wiped out. We're done. That's it. That's what we. That's what. So you're all we got. I mean, yes, there is another, but like I can't teach her anything either, and
Right.
you know more than she does about anything of this. So
Yeah, and it'll be very interesting to see um, how they deal with like Luke training people in the new movies. I'm going to be very interested
oh
to see.
yeah, I'm really excited to see that too. And again, I maybe I've said this before. I really hope that there is. I mean, I hope they're not too in our face about it. I hope there's a little bit of uh, like kind of scene paralleling stuff with 7 and 4, where like there's a part of me that kind of hopes Luke Skywalker gets killed off in the first act of or the second act of the new movie, just because I feel like you really ought to do kind of an Obi-Wan Kenobi thing with him.
I hope at least one of the original cast members dies in the next movie, whether it be Leia, Han, or Luke. I think Luke would make the most sense, but I think Han would be one that I would think they could work in a nice thematic thing to do as well. Because it's sort of like if they go the route of Leia and Han's kids being the Jedi and the focus of the new movie, then them losing their father would be a parallel with the characters from the other movies too.
Sure, yeah, it's true.
So you could go either way, and I think it would
Then
be
Luke
good.
can just have his own Padawan, whatever that is, and then
Right,
kill him,
exactly.
and then kill him off, and then have him just his head just periodically pop up and be like, "Use the Force, whoever you are." That I don't know the characters' names yet.
And then you can pop up at the end of the last movie of this new trilogy, and they'll, you know, retroactively add in ghosts from every Jedi from the prequels and the regular. I mean,
Oh
we're
boy.
gonna see Hayden Christensen by the end of this movie. I hope you remember because we're watching the special editions. So,
Oh man. You know, I don't think I've actually seen it that way because this is the second special edition. Because I haven't watched the special editions since. Well, I think I might have watched this one time, but I don't remember. But like, I watched the VHS ones, and that was before all that.
yeah, I just want to mention one thing about Yoda's death there. Small
Yeah,
inconsistency with the original Star Wars movie. Yoda's entire wardrobe disappears with him when he dies, whereas Obi-Wan disappears out of his clothes. And if you remember, Vader stamping on him looking for anything.
I always was baffled by that
Yeah.
about why he died, and then in the prequels they don't do it that way either.
Hmm.
I don't think. Well, or I don't know. It seems like somebody dies with their clothes falling on the ground or something. Or maybe I'm remembering it
The
wrong. I
idea
don't.
is, and it's not really conveyed in any of the movies, it took expanded universe things to really flesh out and make sense out of it. The thing is, apparently Qui-Gon Jinn discovered how to become one with the Force and become a Force ghost when he died. That was kind of a lost art, and he teaches it to Obi-Wan retroactively as a Force ghost, and then he in turn teaches that to Yoda, so they're like the only three people that know how to do it. So like some of the other Jedi you see that get stabbed and killed, like when Order 66 is enacted and they all get like, brutally murdered by the clone troopers, that's why they don't like disappear out of their clothes and stuff.
And so they're not able to come back as Force ghosts.
Right. Yes.
Oh, okay. So if you disappear out of your clothes, then you get to be a Force ghost unless you're Yoda.
Right. Yeah.
Oh, good to know. I'll make a flowchart.
But we do see
Yeah,
Yoda, I think, as a Force ghost at the end of this movie, so he ends up doing it too.
that's what I'm saying. He knows how to do it.
Right, right, yeah.
Yeah. Um, I just feel the need to say Order 66
Execute Order 66.
because that's hilarious for some reason. 66.
No, Ian McDiarmid is fantastic. Like he's one of the best things about the prequel trilogy. I think he chews up all that scenery. He's great stuff.
Well, yeah, because nobody else in those movies is having any fun.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm sorry. We're not going to talk about the prequels. We're not going to do that again. We should. we should make this a sequel to our last video, Dad, and continue to not do that. There's no way. I mean, we're only 47 minutes in. There's no way.
I'm really surprised that, given Alec Guinness's attitude about these movies, that I've heard him say, and afterwards, after finished filming these, um, it's interesting that they got him. I don't know what his contract was like, but I don't think they signed people for like long-term deals back then. Especially like I didn't think like George Lucas didn't know that Star Wars
Especially
was.
when they didn't know if they were going to make any
Yeah,
more.
exactly. George Lucas didn't know like Star Wars was going to be a franchise when he made the first one. So, given like how Alec Guinness didn't really care for the movies, I at least give him credit for coming back for all three of them.
That's true. He does, doesn't he?
Yeah, even if it's only for like one scene or two.
Yeah. Well, I mean, this one he actually gets a whole scene where he gets to say stuff.
Right,
You didn't have
exactly.
that. You didn't have that in the last one. Oh well, yeah, I guess you did with Yoda, didn't you?
You did,
I guess he
yes.
and Yoda did have a scene together. I forgot all about that. Yeah.
And there is Admiral Akbar of Meme Fan.
Admiral Akbar. Yes.
It's a trap.
That's a trap.
And Lando's got his
I get
cape
a
on
little better
again.
at that every time. Yeah. I'm sorry. What?
Lando's got his cape on again. He's living large. Whenever you,
Dude, I don't understand why. I'm gonna bring that back. I don't understand why people can't just walk out in capes.
they're
That
awesome.
sh- yeah, they're really. It would have been really easy to just not bring Lando back at all.
That's true. Yeah,
Glad they did because it does help to sort of redeem him a little bit.
it does. Yeah. Um,
You know, just by the virtue of him working with the rep. I mean, I guess he somewhat goes with the win,
yeah.
but
He's a guy that does whatever is advantageous to him at the time. Um, and the Empire didn't treat him well. The deal that he had with them didn't work out. So this is the only logical, thing to do.
that's true. Yeah, I mean, the only reason he would stay with them is out of desperation.
Right. And a lot of interesting things are done with him, especially in the Thrawn trilogy of novels that take place right after Jedi, where he gets another position of power and they have to ask him for help and stuff. Lando is a character that I've always really liked, and we talked about this before, but I really really hope Billy D. Williams gets some sort of something to do in
Me
the new
too.
movies.
Yep.
Does it bother you at all that the big sort of enemy plot thing to fight for the Rebel Alliance is the same thing as the first movie? Because I could sort of see as a viewer, just on face value, in 83 going into the movie and seeing them be like, oh, we have to blow up another Death Star. Being a little bit like, come on, really, guys? We're going to do the same thing over again?
I had never thought about this before, but I feel like there is a huge attempt at symmetry here.
Yeah,
Just everything's coming back, but not in such a way where it feels like it's the exact same story again. I feel like it's pretty organic in the way that it's doing it. I mean, like, I'm not sure if subtle is the right word, especially with the second Death Star.
right.
But as far as like we said earlier, like with the rope swing and with Yoda dying, just like Obi-Wan died, and all that kind of stuff. Like I feel like they're sneaking that stuff in there, like we're reminding you of all the things you loved with the first movie in order to send this off because they didn't think they were going to ever make any more.
Right.
And I don't know. I think it kind of works. And I think the Death Star thing. It's earlier. It's not at the end of the film, so you don't feel like you're building to the climax. I think if this was the third act, that would be really problematic. Be like, oh man, so we're gonna end this by blowing up another Death Star, but this time Luke's so powerful, he's just gonna stand inside this room and think about it, and it's gonna blow up.
Right.
Like they could have done that.
Right,
I
that's
mean, I'm glad
true.
they didn't do that.
And to your point about the paralleling, I mean, they even took the terrain of the planet that the rebels have their base on, Yavin 4, in the first movie. And Endor is also a forest world. It's completely covered by forest, but the roles are reversed this time. We have the Empire having their base being assaulted by the rebels instead of the other way around. So it's the same exact situation, just flipped this time.
And there's a lot of kind of cool mirroring on top of paralleling, right? Where like
Yes.
what Luke this time has to go back home instead of starting from there and leaving, and he's like a different person now. So there's some inherent kind of interesting emotional stuff there. I mean, they don't play with it, but I guess you can kind of imagine. I'm maybe projecting too much, but you can kind of imagine that he would maybe be thinking we're thinking this is a totally different person now from the last time we saw him on Tatooine. That's really symbolic of where he's gone and
Right.
where he is now. So it's good that we're in that terrain. So
No.
I don't know. I mean, I feel like I could go on and on about just all the different things that they brought back from the first one and why maybe they did that.
Oh yeah, most definitely. And I think that scene that we just got with Han and Lando there. I almost said Leo. I meant Lando.
Lego,
Yeah, Lego.
Lego, Calrissian
I think that was
of Organa.
right. I think that was a good sort of scene to sum up where Han has come as a character here, where like he's sort of apprehensive at like being as big of a part of this Rebel Alliance thing as he is, and Lando tries to make him feel better by calling him a pirate and sending him off on the mission, you know? Uh,
Yeah, that's good stuff. It's a good call. Well, and I mean, don't they call him Captain Solo? Like
yeah,
he's got a official rank and stuff, and he's like, I don't want any part of this.
exactly. He's like, I never thought I would be entailed in any sort of political dispute. I just want to make my money smuggling and go home at the end of the day.
Yeah, and I think he's kind of we appreciate him more because he's thrust into it, and
Exactly.
so he allows himself to be thrust into it because he knows it's the right thing. So while he's resistant to it, we can we can appreciate him and feel like okay, he's like a real feeling person because he's going okay, fine, but like he's got his own wants just like the rest of us do. He's a selfish person, but the selfishness doesn't win out at the end. So we like him.
Right, and I think the
I
reason
just defined his archetype by the way.
right. And I think it's cool that like to your point about the burden being thrust upon him, it's like the same exact thing that happened to Luke Skywalker, just that Luke's a little bit more accepting of the burden that was thrust upon him, and his need to carry it is a little bit greater personally for him, I suppose.
Well, you're right. They both want different things and are thrust in other things. I mean, like he wants money, and Luke just wanted to be an adventurer. He just wanted to go explore,
And
and
their cause became nobler as this, series of movies unfolded.
yeah, that's right. Luke thought he was going out in the Star Trek world, and he found out he was in Star Wars. I mean,
Yeah,
that's
that's true.
that's ultimately what happened. He wanted to be Captain Kirk, but he doesn't get to do that.
Right. That's interesting. I never thought about it that way, but you're totally right.
That's precisely what it is, though, isn't it?
Yeah, that's precisely what it is. And I love the design here of I think we saw this ship in Empire, but I'm going to say it again if I didn't mention it there. The Super Star Destroyer, Vader's capital ship. Um, it just looks like 10 times bigger than a regular Star Destroyer, and the design is really cool. See, and it's a miracle that this officer is still alive. Like he survived. He's still Vader hasn't, found him to be an incompetent subordinate yet.
Was he at the end of the last
He
one?
was, yes.
And he's still alive?
Yes.
Wow, that actor should be lucky to even have work right now. Okay, I mean in this movie, we are 55 minutes in, and he's not dead yet.
And at least I think that's the same guy. Don't like quote me on that exactly, but if memory serves, that is the same guy. But I'm not 100% sure, I have to say.
Why? Forgive me for not remembering this because I just don't know my Star Wars that well. Was the Death Star fully finished in the first one?
Yes, it was.
Was it totally construct? Okay,
Yeah.
and so we're seeing a not quite constructed one for the first time here.
Yes.
Which once again, when you get to the end of Revenge of the Sith, you see kind of this exact thing.
Yes, exactly.
So they're working on it. Yeah.
And the fact that it's uncompleted here plays into the Emperor's whole ruse of tricking the rebels into thinking the Death Star is not operational and then firing a laser on them during the battle.
Which is a really good
It
plan.
is, yes.
I mean, I love that we've got competent bad guys.
Me too.
I mean, they know what they're doing. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I see so many movies lately, that don't have
It's true.
that don't have
Yep.
content bad guys.
We're not
That'll
going
make
to
an
name
entire
anything in
sense.
particular,
Yeah.
but yeah, just look at the timestamp. Yeah, if you're watching this quite a bit later, especially look at the timestamp on our video, and then go see what movies got released this week, and you might have a sense of what we're talking about. We're not even going to mention it.
Because we
Don't do it,
Yeah, because
Dan.
before we started recording, we promised that we wouldn't.
We talked about that for 45 minutes, and we said whatever we do, we are not going to start. We're not going to launch into a review of that movie.
And here we have my favorite stormtrooper, Star Wars trooper in general design of all time, the Scout Troopers. Their helmets are so cool looking. I used to have.
I prefer the snowtroopers, but I'm with
Oh,
you. They're
fair
cool.
enough.
But I
Snowtroopers are
love
great.
the snow. If we're gonna, let's compare our troopers, Dan. I like snowtroopers more
No, I mean,
because they're cool because they're in the snow, Dan.
no, I mean, fair enough. I'm with you. I love the Snowtrooper design. I've just always been partial to those helmets. I think they look fantastic, and I was a Scout Trooper more than once for Halloween as a kid. I had that helmet and the costume and everything. I have to say, I thought I looked pretty good in it.
It looks in hindsight, in retrospect, a little bit like stormtroopers wearing scream masks.
Wow, I never pictured that way, but you're completely right. That's interesting.
One of those guys has a giant knife. You better watch out, and a telephone, and he's gonna call you up and try to freak you out. I'm on a land speeder somewhere in this forest.
See, that's
Ooh.
why they lost to the Ewoks. They all just got equipped with knives.
Actually, what are these things called? They're not land speeders because the land speeder is the thing that you put like lots of people in, right?
Yeah, a land speeder is basically just a car hovering vehicle, and these are speeder bikes.
Oh, okay, speeder
Yeah,
bikes.
so
That's
you were
called
close.
speeder bikes.
Yeah.
Okay. I expected some kind of like alien sort of name.
No, no, no. You weren't far off.
Oh, okay. The speeder is in there someplace.
Yes, yes.
Well, it's clearly the same technology, or at least it looks like probably similar technology.
Yes, it is similar technology. And I can't believe, by the way, that we're already on Endor. Like, this is where part of the climax of the film happens, and we're already here.
Yeah. Well, we felt the same way when we were talking about Hoth in Empire, where we were like, we're 35 minutes in, we're still on Hoth. That's crazy. I mean, I guess it's sort of different, but I'm just saying like we spent a little more time in some of these places than you'd expect. We are sort of gearing up for the climax already, and we still have an hour and 15 minutes left. Like we're not even halfway through this.
Yeah, exactly. And one of the things that is interesting about the climax of the Star Wars movies is like, at least with the original trilogy, the endings in how many subplots are going on at the same time, they get more and more complex as you go along.
Hmm.
Like this is this one dangles the most plot threads between all the characters of all of them. You have like Lando trying to blow up the Death Star with the fleet, Luke fighting on the Death Star, and then Han, Leia, C-3PO, and R2-D2 on the ground trying to fight the Imperials there, and Chewbacca too. So you got three different subplots going on. So it kind of makes sense that we're already here, I suppose, if we got to wrap up three subplots of an ending by the time this thing's over.
Yeah, because if there were fewer, it just wouldn't take as long.
Yeah, exactly.
But it could have gotten way too complicated. I think I've heard some people complain that like, oh, like we start complicating it where there's too many subplots as we go. Like that's a problem, that happens as we go along. But I feel like when you get to the end of this movie, it's kind of hard to. It would be kind of hard to buy, sort of bringing down the Empire the way they do if it wasn't from multiple fronts.
Oh, exactly. Yeah.
I don't think you could really have just, Luke. I mean, I guess you could just have, Luke and Vader kill the Emperor, and then because the Emperor's gone, now we don't have an Empire anymore. But it makes a little more sense to at least take out some armies.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Just looking at it as a war movie, and that's something we haven't done a whole lot of. I think it really is important to look at these as strategic war films because they are that.
That's true. Yeah. And, you know, your point is especially apt considering that the rebels already destroyed the Death Star once and the Empire survived. It would be difficult to buy if they just blew it up again and then, okay, the Empire's done because we blew up their second Death Star. Well, they survived the first one.
Well, and I feel like there's such an infrastructure that it could be possible for the Empire to even survive the death of the Sith.
And they do in the expanded universe, which is really interesting. And
Oh, they do.
the premise of my favorite book series written by Timothy Zahn, it's called the Thrawn trilogy, where the only alien who ever is accepted by the Empire just because he's a strategic genius is the one that leads the remnants of the Empire. And the New Republic like outnumbers them totally with like ships and manpower and stuff, but he still beats them just because he's a strategic genius. And he's one of
Oh, that's really
yeah,
interesting.
he's one of the best Star Wars villains ever. And that's the one thing about EU that I'm sad is getting wiped out of continuity.
Do you think they'll do something similar?
I
I
doubt
mean,
it.
with the new stuff, because you're right, it would be so much more interesting if the Empire wasn't completely wiped out. Because you don't really, I don't think you want the opposite of this. I don't think you want to just keep snowballing it back and forth where we have one trilogy where it's all Sith and no Jedi, and then we have another one where it's all Jedi and no Sith,
Right.
and then we flip it back. Like, I don't think we want to keep doing that.
hmm No, I agree 100%. It would be interesting to see in the new trilogy them abolish the rule of two and we see like, Sith academies on the same level that we used to see them in ancient times and how the Jedi are portrayed in the prequels where there's hundreds of them and stuff.
They should do that. It would be really smart.
It would. I agree.
Because they'd be like, well, maybe we could keep our empire around longer if we had more people with superpowers.
That's true, yeah.
I mean, if you just go down to brass tacks, we need more people with superpowers. So, back in the day, here's the introduction to the Ewoks. Back in the day, the big complaint you heard about this movie was, oh, we gotta have these stupid, cute little bears in our Star Wars movie, which these things are known for, kind of in a way pushing envelopes of violence. Not that they're like super gruesome or anything, but like, we allow, there are stakes and we see them and we allow people to get killed, and we have sarlacc pits, and
Right.
we have the big snow monster in the beginning of the second one and all that stuff. And that like this somehow kind of diminishes all of that and makes it too cutesy. And I don't know, man, perspectives change because this doesn't hold a candle to Jar Jar Binks.
No, I completely agree. The Ewoks never bothered me, and I'm genuinely kind of charmed by Wicket here. I think Wicket's he's not like the deepest, most nuanced character that I'm gonna remember from these movies, but I don't mind him. I think it's interesting to see them interact with the natives of a planet, because Tatooine's kind of like a homogenous, um, well, not homogenous because there's lots of different types of aliens there, but it's sort of like a port, like with this all different kinds of aliens, races, and people going in and out of there. We've never seen like an indigenous race interact with any of these factions before. That there's no established civilization on the planet before. So I think, it's bringing something to the series that we haven't necessarily seen before, right?
Yeah, that's absolutely true. I can somewhat understand the complaint of maybe this wasn't the place for it.
Right. Yeah.
Just in the middle of all this climax, but like I mean this big climactic third act of this trilogy. Then again, at the same time, you don't want the whole movie to just be serviceable ending, right?
Right.
Like it just, I don't know. It's not that it doesn't make sense. It's not like, well, we go to this planet. Who lives there?
hmm
Be good to know that. We've gotten that on every other planet we've gone to. I mean, Hoth was an ice planet, so you don't have a civilization, but you got
That's
monsters.
true. Yeah. And I don't know. I think it kind of works too because like you have this planet of relatively peaceful bear people. I mean, they have weapons of war because they need to defend themselves, but like the Empire is trying to dominate and weaponize the planet at any cost. They don't really care about the natives, and the
Okay,
rebels
so
are
it
kind of
ups
the
the
noble people that
stakes.
work with them and help them save their home and stuff.
Yeah, we're gonna care more
Yeah,
if we got these people on the planet that need to be saved. And I mean, there is a little bit of that in Star Wars where like we're supposed to care about entire planets that we don't really see much of. Like I guess we care about Leia's home planet only because it's hers and we're supposed to like her.
right.
But it's like, oh well, her planet's going to be destroyed and we don't meet anybody from there except for her, really.
That's true. Yeah.
So the Wikipedia for Star Wars' wiki page is called Wikipedia,
Yes, which is awesome.
and it just as easily could have been called Wikipedia.
That's true.
But it's probably more people probably would like it to be called Wikipedia.
Yeah.
So speaking of sets that are always super cool,
Oh, this chair, man. I want one in my house.
You just don't get more evil than that chair, Dad.
Yeah, like if I had an office and like I could spin around whenever like someone came into the office and go, "Yes," I would just feel like the coolest person alive.
And then if anybody asked me why my chair has a roof, I would say, well, what if it hails? You don't know.
It needs to contain my evil.
um, this guy, I forget what you said his name was because I've never seen him in anything else. I never thought about it, but this guy playing the Emperor, like he doesn't get nearly enough credit for making up that voice.
He doesn't.
Because that's like one of the most distinctive things. I mean, you hear people making fun of that everywhere. You know, like if I had to make a list of characters that have like incredibly distinct voices that nobody has ever really duplicated, because you can't, because you would just, people would go, you're just doing that guy. It'd be that. Vader is one of them actually. So like it's that, it's Vader, it's like Bane from Dark Knight Rises. Like these are things that we remember because they're just such distinct performances, right?
Yeah, exactly. And you really have to give him credit too, because if you're not watching the special editions, if you remember, the Emperor from Empire, when you see him on that hologram message when he's talking to Vader, his face is almost completely obscured in shadow because they hadn't cast Ian McDiarmid yet, and they didn't have the voice either. It sounded completely different. So, you bring him in here and he makes the Emperor his own. He completely
You know,
defines the role.
I watched Empire a few months ago in the original
Hmm.
form, and I don't remember the voice being quite that different. Like I think I need to go back and watch that again because I think maybe the other guy kind of did a really similar voice, and then this guy perfected it. I don't know. I need to go back and listen to it again. I don't remember it being quite that all that different.
I remember hearing interviews with Ian McDiarmid about Jedi and him coming
I
into
just need to
this.
listen. I just need to listen to it.
Right, and
Yeah.
he was saying that him and Lucas worked a lot on the voice and for this movie specifically. So I think it wasn't a matter of him copying the last guy. It was just Lucas working with the actor and stuff for this
Well,
one.
and he has such little dialogue in that scene that it might not be a thing you'd even remember.
Right, exactly.
Because I think Vader has most of the dialogue in that scene.
He does for the most part, yeah,
Because they're just trying to keep that so mysterious.
which is good.
If it had been me doing the special editions, I kind of understand bringing in the other actor,
Hmm.
like to be more consistent. That makes perfect sense. I would have kept it obscured. I wouldn't have seen his whole face like that because it's such a better reveal when we get to this and we finally get to see his face. Like, isn't it cooler if you're like, "Who? I wonder what he looks like." I
Yeah.
mean, I know most people would have probably watched the other two. Most kids would watch the other trilogy first because they think it's in order or whatever.
Right.
But I'm just saying, like, just for the sake of story progression, I resist that hard. I think the way they did it was cool.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I mean, even in this movie, his face isn't completely shown until Luke comes onto the Death Star and we see just how deformed his face is, right?
Yeah, it's awesome.
It's really cool. Like when he was getting off his shuttle earlier, and then just then when we saw him in the chair, you can see that he's really pale, but you can't see just how, decrepit and wrinkly and deformed his face is from being corrupted by the dark side.
And then what's important is Vader's is worse.
Yes, it is.
And when we see Vader, if we're thinking about it, we realize that the two people that have been changed so much by the dark side have become something almost inhuman.
Yes, exactly.
I think it's very important that they both look that messed up.
No, I definitely agree. And that's
They've all, and that's where like that line about like he's more machine than human and stuff comes in, where like the dark side of the force has like changed these people and made them something not quite right.
yeah, exactly. And that's why I've always kind of resisted the idea of how he gets that wrinkled in the prequels, how he just, shocks himself by accident. The idea that I always liked was that, and this has been done in many other EU things, where like the dark side of the Force, the longer you use it, the more you tap into it, the more you let it corrupt you. It ages you prematurely, and you get like white hair, and you turn gray, you start losing your hair, your skin wrinkles, and stuff like that. Just as the Emperor sort of looks in this movie, and how Vader looks. So,
That reminds me so much of the Master and
oh
Buffy.
yeah.
Yeah, it's a lot like that. We're like the longer a vampire manages to live, the more totally like monsterish they get.
Oh, interesting.
And then they get a lot more powerful, just like with the Force.
Oh, cool.
And so that's where in that version of vampires, that's where like being able to turn into a bat and all that kind of stuff comes from. Where like normal vampires can't do that kind of stuff, but then as they progress, if they manage to not get staked or get out in the sunlight or get hit with holy water or any of the myriad ways that you can get killed when you're a vampire, and they live for like several hundred or thousand years, they start increasing all the power they can do, and that's where those other kind of forms of superpowers come from.
Oh, cool. That's a show I need to go through and watch sometime. I feel like I would really like it.
Yeah, yeah, you would. I kind of wonder if you'd have the Ewok culture look like it does if it weren't for Planet of the Apes.
That's an interesting observation. I didn't really think about that, but that could possibly be an influence. You're right.
I've had Planet of the Apes in the brain lately, but I kind of think there's maybe a little bit of that going on.
Yeah, I was thinking also kind of like just in relation to like the kind of cultures that have been historically dominated by empires like African and Native American cultures, like
Oh,
that
definitely,
tribal kind of
certainly.
thing. That's what it
But
all
like when we think of primitive, we think of stuff that looks like this.
right, yeah, definitely. The, I don't know, like the way that they're all behaving here is kind of charming to me. I'm not really annoyed by them. Maybe it's just the fact that they're so easily able to kill stormtroopers that makes people angry, and I can kind of see that. Um, I kind of get what Lucas and company were going for in that scene where it's like guerrilla warriors are able to use their ingenuity to beat this, highly mechanized force, but like they beat them with rocks and they're armored
Yeah, but
people.
were stormtroopers ever that hard to be? I mean, you're right. Rocks, yeah, okay. I guess that's a good point.
Yeah, I mean, stormtroopers have always been largely incompetent, but one would think that their armor would protect them from rocks.
Yeah, I don't think incompetence equates I get hit in the head with a rock wearing a really heavy helmet.
Right,
I mean,
exactly.
like, I've seen guys walking around in that stuff at conventions, and I know that if I started waylaying on them, they'd be fine.
Yeah, exactly.
With anything.
Yeah.
I could pick up a walking stick and go to town, and they'd be okay.
Yeah. I love how they've lionized C-3PO here too.
Yeah, and that's a very typical sci-fi thing. To go to a primitive culture and everybody worships you as a god.
Hmm.
That's a very classic sci-fi motif that they're going back to here.
Very interesting how Luke is deceiving the Ewoks here too. It's sort of like the way Obi-Wan taught him to, speak in half truths if it suits him and stuff like that.
Yeah, I always wondered if there's maybe if there's either a slight blurring of lines sometimes between the dark side and in the light side, where the Jedi and anybody using the light side of the Force might get a little bit full of themselves and naive about what exactly it means. You know what I mean? Where like we can kind of interpret it a little
Oh
bit. Where
yeah,
it's like, where do you
definitely.
draw the line? When does it stop becoming, or when does it start becoming dark and deceitful, and when is it just for the greater good? And the movies don't really go into that, but I mean, like, what exactly is the interpretation?
Oh yeah, and that's the classic kind of thing for things outside of the movies of how really powerful and great Jedi fall. Some of the great, stories that I like about like Darth Revan and people like that. They were once Jedi and they try to fight for the greater good of like their people, their homeworld being obliterated and it ends up corrupting them and because they're victorious and stuff.
Well, one thing I think you gotta wonder too when you're looking at something like this is it what I just said, or is it that the piece itself is telling you what ethics should be?
Hmm.
Is it saying that on the light side of the force sometimes the ends justify the means? Is it actually giving you a worldview? Is it giving you an ethical code, or should we be asking that kind of question? Like what exactly is it?
I think it definitely at least poses the argument, like you know, at least when we get to Darth Vader and Luke's conversation on the Death Star, and maybe previous conversations in Empire too, where he, especially at the end where he's talking about how they can rule the galaxy and bring law and order and stuff. Like,
Yeah.
how much order can you bring to a society in a galaxy in this case without it being oppressive? Um, you know, Freedom has to allow for some sort of, you know, chaos to some degree, I suppose, right? If you let people do whatever they want by virtue, there's going to be some sort of, negative repercussions, even though, we don't want to be oppressed as people, right?
Yeah.
It's an interesting
It,
ethical conundrum.
it is, and certainly, of course, motivation matters
Yes.
because there is a lot of manipulation going on there. So how much does the Emperor care about actual order versus his own power?
Right.
And so he likes to tell people what they want to hear because it's all about, the dark side's all about selfish motivation. If I can make Luke come to us by thinking that it's the altruistic thing to do, what he's really doing is not serving altruism but serving his own wants, and his want just happens to be a thing that sounds altruistic.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's the distinction that's always been interesting between Vader and the Emperor, and why Luke still sees good in Vader is because, like, the Emperor does things that can be perceived as potentially altruistic for his own evil reasons, and Vader
But
does.
it's pretty easy to see through that.
Yes, exactly. And Vader does evil things for for the altruistic reasons that he sees in his mind. It's almost the flipped sort of reason for the way in which they're doing things. Like, I don't think Vader necessarily does all the things he thinks he does for power. I think he genuinely believes in the structure and the law and order of the Empire, Like, he believes it to be a force for good in the galaxy. At least that's what the idea is supposed to be with Anakin later on and why he falls. And I think it's somewhat consistently represented here in these
Yeah,
movies.
and also I think he hit a point of no return, right?
Right, exactly.
He's a damaged person. When you've had that done to you, where do you go from there?
Yeah, it's a really
It's
tough
almost
question.
it's almost a to rule in hell sort of situation
Right, yeah, that's interesting.
where well, I mean, you don't really have the farther extent of the rest of that. You don't have the serving in heaven part, but I just mean, like, okay, you can either be the right hand man of the emperor and have this really cushy position where you get to go around just killing whoever you want to,
Mhm.
or you can turn against all that and do what? What do you have? I mean, like, are you gonna single handedly take the empire down?
It seems like a very daunting task. The one that
Yeah.
just seems almost impossible. And that's what's so, I think, awesome about these characters is they never, there's doubt, but they never really lose hope or sight of any of their goals here in these movies. Um, I think Han Solo is probably the most doubtful out of all of them, and even then, he sticks with the rebellion pretty much the whole time, except for at the beginning of Empire and um, at the end of A New Hope, I guess. Like, he's always sort of reluctantly with the rebellion, whether he really wants to be there or not. Who knows how much he's like trying to put on a persona to who he thinks he is, right?
Yeah.
Um, but this is the scene here. I think I missed the subtitle here, but I think Luke just revealed to Leia that they're related, and he's sort of like saying to her that she's going to need to carry the torch if he doesn't come back, which is kind of a cool scene, really touching between the two of them.
Yeah, and they both just have a lot of confidence now.
They do. And I'm kind of two minds about this brother sister thing too, in retrospect, because I've heard the criticism and I think it's somewhat valid. I want to ask you what you think about it.
Yeah.
At the beginning of this movie series, it's kind of typical where we have the hero and the girl set up to be lovers, and then Empire completely subverts that notion, and the hero doesn't get the girl, the roguish character that's sort of not the knight in shining white armor gets the girl, And this movie provides a reason why the hero isn't able to ever be with her in the first place. To sort of just say, oh, the reason we didn't do that was because they're brother and sister, that could never happen in the first place. Like it kind of dampens that interesting subversion in a way. People have said that. I think that's an interesting argument. What do you think?
Yeah, that is, and I can totally see why people would say that. I part of it in retrospect, part of the reason I don't think I came to that is because just retroactively looking at this, clearly they had that idea planted in the series midway through.
Hmm.
Like it's not just this. You have that line with a Yoda. Oh, there's another. They already knew they were going to go there.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
so that sort of helps it. I don't know. The fact that we find out about it as late as we do, I think kind of helps it a little bit.
Hmm.
I don't know. I never given that a great deal of thought, Dan. But yeah, I can totally see why people said that because yeah, you're right. It is more subversive if it's just he doesn't get her because Han Solo and Han Solo deserves it as much or more.
Oh, much more, I would say.
And he's also not finished. Like I think at this point, Han Solo is pretty much already completed his major character
He
arc.
has,
I
yeah.
mean, he's gonna get her at the end, but he pretty much completed it before he went into the carbonite, right?
He did, yeah.
Now that he's come out, it's almost a rebirth, almost, and like he still resists the role he's in, like we said earlier, but he's never gonna go against it now, and you can tell, and he's definitely matured, and he has a sense of responsibility and all of that. Luke still has this major confliction. He's got to deal with Vader,
Yeah.
and he thinks that he can turn him around and stuff, and so now we're gonna have this tug of war. We're gonna have this kind of battle of wills between them, and so when would he have gotten her? Like right at the end after Vader get like when would that have happened?
Yeah, that's true.
I don't know that. I guess what I'm saying is I don't think it would have made sense even if they weren't brother and sister. I don't know where it would have happened.
That's very true. Yeah.
It would have been a very different story,
Oh,
you know.
definitely. I think it's very fitting, to your point, that Luke and Vader are the only two characters by the end of this story that have anywhere to go character-wise.
Yeah.
Um, it's very methodical and economic storytelling, right? Like we could have potentially got to this last movie and had to wrap up everybody's character arc, and I think it wouldn't have worked if we
And
had to.
I don't think real life is like that.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
I mean, that's part of it. And I mean, I'm not calling these, incredibly realistic to real life. It is a fantasy. But to make us buy these characters, I mean, like, yes, it's a three-act play, but each movie also has its own story. I feel like this more than any of the other ones feels like it's wrapping stuff. I mean, it's got to feel like that, but you know what I mean.
Right.
Like, it doesn't feel so much like it has a beginning. I feel like even Empire's got kind of a beginning.
Oh, definitely.
This sort of does, but you know what I mean. It's very much okay. Last time on Star Wars.
Yeah, and I think the three act play thing comes from Luke and Vader's sort of character arcs and relationship they have with each other, and then the stories with the other characters are the kind of things that fill out and make the other movies feel like standalone stories to some degree. Because I feel like Han Solo is the same person he is at the end of A New Hope to some almost like at A New Hope, he does have the character thing of where he comes back to save Luke, but I feel like he's pretty much the space pirate at the beginning of Empire, and by the end, he's a different person. So like, you get a complete sort of beginning and resolution for at least one character's character arc, and that makes it feel like a full standalone kind of story on its own.
Yeah,
Whereas Luke provides the sort of ongoing three act play kind of thing you were talking about, which is
it just
fitting.
would have felt too easy and too wrapped up in a bow if everybody in the last act of the three movie thing when we have an ensemble cast, if all of them like, oh, and I just learned this thing and I just learned that, you know what I mean.
Right.
It doesn't work that way.
And I think that helps in like we're not wrapping all these character arcs up at the same time and having them all survive and live happily ever after right after resolving their character arcs. Like I don't think this feels as much like the main cast has plot armor because we want to see them live happily ever after at the end, which some people have said about this movie It's kind of strange that in a war movie there's no major casualties with the characters you've been with for 3 films.
Yeah, that's somewhat fair, but may I suggest that it's also a sci-fi film serial.
Hmm.
Nobody dies in those either.
That's true, and I think you're not thinking
So
of
it's a more sophisticated one of
right.
those, but it still wants to be one of those. I think it still has to have that, or at least I think Lucas still wants to have that happily ever after thing at the end of it. Once you get to the prequels, and even no matter how they had done them with what has to happen to Vader, that can't be a happy ending thing. So we are very quickly getting out of that kind of territory once we go to those. I think that's one of the difficulties
Yeah,
with doing those as prequels is that you no longer have the film serial thing just by virtue of going there. So you can have that in a backstory, and like I think film serials often have that kind of thing, where it's like, okay, we have this backstory and there's some horrible tragic things that happen, but you're gonna get to see this, maybe it gets a little heavy here and there, but you get kind of a lighthearted ending. If you go back to it, you immediately have started doing a different thing. It's brand new territory, and I think that's part of why those were so hard to do.
man, that's a really good point. I never thought about it that way before you, but I think you're completely right. Um, man, yeah, you kind of just blew my mind there. That's awesome.
Oh, oh.
Because I never I'm not as well versed in sci-fi serials, I suppose, as you like.
I mean, I'm not an expert. I've seen a few, but you've seen a couple, and in some ways you've seen them all. I mean, they're very
Right,
formulaic,
yeah,
but like we all know, the good guys always win.
right. And nobody in the principal cast gets killed off because you want to see them, get
I
there
don't.
just for
I'm
what
sure it's. I wouldn't be surprised if it happened someplace, but most of the
but
time, no.
typically,
Yeah,
yeah. That the
yeah, typically.
and this is all about sort of homaging the tropes of that genre. So, yeah, you're definitely right on that.
Yeah, it just seems like it would have kind of gone too hard against that. I mean, it's the same thing with Indiana Jones. We couldn't kill him
Oh,
off.
no, definitely not.
And that's a lot of why I guess I'm doing the same thing we were doing with the prequels when I say this, but that's a lot of why Indiana Joe in the fourth Indiana Jones film doesn't really work that well to me, because it breaks the whole trope of that of, oh, let's try to tie all these together as if it was this like big ongoing thing. It's an adventure serial. It's a little bit different from this, where it's every time you see that guy, he's having a new adventure, and we don't really have to make a big deal out of what's happened before. We could mention things, and those movies do that, but this was not a culmination up to a thing that happens.
Right, yeah.
And so the distinction is those were all like separate adventures, and this is in ongoing serialized story.
Yeah, exactly. It's almost like Lucas tried to make like a serial in its entirety in one Indiana Jones film and then made a serial over 3 Star Wars movies.
Well, I think what he was doing there is he was doing a different kind of serial. You have the serialized ones, or at least like, I don't know, maybe that's not the right word. I mean like the adventure serial, in that like um you have like a little movie before the movie. You know what I mean?
Right, yeah.
So he was doing more like with Indiana Jones. It was more like a Fleischer Superman cartoon.
Mhm.
Like you get one, but they don't talk about each other as you go along.
Right.
Whereas this is more like Flash Gordon or something.
Right. And Flash Gordon, of course, is a huge influence on these movies. George Lucas has said that many times. So, yeah, I think you're right there.
Fleischer's not a good example. That's a different sort of thing. But I just mean in structure.
Right,
In
yeah. I was going to mention I love how the Emperor, like the way this is played, the Emperor just kind of flicks his fingers and the handcuffs fall off. Such a demonstration of his power, and we finally get to see his face. That thing from Fantastic Four esque eyebrow ridge there always freaked me out.
Yeah, I love that you said it like that. It does kind of look like that. Earlier we talked over a scene where Vader has this very kind of human moment where he says, "It's too late for me, son."
Yeah, I've always really liked that moment too.
And I really like that he says that because that again it immediately kind of humanizes him. He's showing a little bit of a moment of weakness there, and he's saying that I think it's like what I was saying earlier. I'm doing what I'm doing because I've already lost. I'm a part of this whole thing. I'd love to change it now, but I can't. I've already committed. I'm done. I've given up, and I gave up a long time ago.
Yeah, and I think this movie
It's
does.
so defeatist. It's really sad. It's very
It
tragic.
is, and I think the best thing about Jedi, say what you want about the Ewoks and stuff like that, like you can't discredit it for this is the movie that I think defines Vader's character more than any of the other movies, as a tragic character. Like in Empire, one could assume like that he's just a guy all about wanting to usurp the Emperor's power, right?
Yeah,
He talks
sure.
about sort of believing in the ideals of the Law and Order of the Empire and stuff, but one could assume that he's just sort of an evil dude that's out of control. This movie takes a uh, it's consistent, but it looks at the character through a different lens, and I appreciate that.
I also think that there are times, especially in that movie, where he says things and you might not be able to fully trust what he's saying.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, and you could look at it different ways. You could look at it as he's hanging on to that idea that like I'm not totally evil. There's still some good happening here. This is a necessary evil. At the same time, you could look at it as he's still trying to convince himself.
That's true.
He knows it's wrong, but he's still kind of trying to convince himself.
Yeah, exactly. And I think maybe it's the sort of thing too where like in the last movie, he saw his son trying to be a Jedi and he was so much weaker than him. Now, Luke's kind of his equal power wise, and he sees like a fully formed Jedi in front of him for the first time in a very long time that wasn't like his old master that failed him and stuff like that. And it maybe awakens some sort of suspicion in him where it's like, yeah, maybe I didn't choose the right path here.
Yeah, and I mean, like when Luke says, "I feel confliction in you." What are the conflicting emotions?
Yeah, that's
What
true.
are they? Is it pride? Is it something akin to jealousy? I'm looking at what I wish I had been.
That's a very good point. Yeah.
Is it hatred of the Emperor for duping him into becoming what he is instead of what Luke is? Is it terror of he's looking at what he used to be, but he knows what the Emperor is going to turn him into? So like it could partially, or it could be like he thinks Luke could win, or it could even be I'm seeing him go down the path I took.
Yeah, and either taking his path or Vader could be leading him to his death too.
Yeah, and Vader's going to be the instrument by which he becomes himself. So like he's seeing the son become the father, and he himself, as the instrument of the thing that turned him into what he is going to turn his son into himself.
Yes.
Oh
Oh man.
no, there's a lot going on there, man,
Yeah, I think the character stuff with Luke and Vader alone is enough to justify
and it
this movie
really
being good.
outweighs anything else that might not be to your taste or whatever. I think,
I agree.
and I would say that the Empire is a better movie with all that.
Oh, it is.
Yeah, I
Definitely.
love Empire, and when I'm seeing all that stuff, I in retrospect, it's impossible not to enjoy it for where I know it's going. I'm sure people loved Empire when it came out as much as they love it now, but like I'm not sure that this doesn't reinforce some of that.
Oh, it definitely does.
Third act pacing stuff and whatever is totally fair criticism, but the stuff in this room is what works the most, and luckily, it's what matters most.
Exactly. I completely agree. And I spoke in the Empire podcast a little bit about how I thought this was the weakest of the three. And when I say that, these are incredibly well done films. And out of the three of them, I think this is the one that has the most weak links. But that doesn't mean it doesn't have all of the things that made the last movies great in some parts as well. And I think these scenes are exemplary of that. I mean, I think you can look at Empire and A New Hope to some degree and be like, there's nothing here that I have really a problem with, right? I mean, certainly with those two movies, I can't think of anything off the top of my head where it's like, "Oh, I wish that, this was fundamentally different other than maybe fleshing out Leia's character a little bit more." But
which is like the only thing
yeah,
that
exactly.
you really complain about very much with those. Yeah, I completely agree with you. I mean, what kind of pressure are you under
Oh,
when you're trying to wrap all that up?
I can't even imagine. I can't even
I mean,
imagine the pressure riding on this movie before it came out.
Empire. I have no idea how much of this they wrote at the same time. I don't know the process.
Mhm.
I'm sure people know this. I'm sure people could educate me. But I don't know how much of this they had figured out as they were finalizing what was going to happen in Empire. But boy, the end of that feels like, and you haven't seen this yet, Dan, but the end of that feels a lot like potentially writers writing themselves into a fantastic corner like Best of Both Worlds with TNG when Picard becomes a Borg. And when they wrote that episode, they had no idea where it was going. They had this fantastic ending, and then it was like, we don't know what we're gonna do with it. And so the second part wasn't nearly as good as the first part, and it couldn't possibly have
Oh,
been.
of course, yeah.
Well, you get to the end of Empire, and I mean, you've got Han Solo and Carbonite and stuff, and you're like, holy, and like Vader cuts Luke's arm off. That very easily could have been, and I don't know if it was, writers writing themselves into this fantastic corner. All right, we got to get out of this somehow, but at least for the moment, boy, look at us. And so like maybe they knew exactly where all that was going, but all I'm saying is that's what second acts are like.
Oh, exactly, yeah.
That's what really good cliffhangers are like. You get to the end of Matrix Reloaded, and you're like, "Oh my God, freaking Agent Smith! He's inside a person. We're gonna get to see Agent Smith in the real world inside this guy's mind. That's amazing! Wow! Well, they wrote themselves into a corner. The third movie's not that good, but." For the moment that I got to enjoy that cliffhanger in the theater and had to wait 6 months, I was like mind blown,
Right?
dude.
Yeah. And I can only imagine what the people waiting for this movie were like.
Oh yeah, sure, and they had to wait longer.
So just by virtue of that, how
I
good
think
Empire and
I
that,
don't
yeah,
I don't know how many months were between them.
Empire was 1980 and this was 83.
Oh,
So
so they had to wait 3 years. I
yes, they
didn't know
did.
that. All right.
Um,
Well, then it's very likely that they didn't have any idea where they were going when they got to the end of that movie. Or at least not any idea, but that they hadn't got it totally fleshed out. Clearly, they knew the brother sister thing. I mean, they had some of that
right.
figured out.
And I want to make sure because I keep saying 83 and I'm like
No, I
90.
looked it up already.
Okay,
It is.
okay. I was 95% positive that that was it, but I didn't want to sound stupid saying that over and over again if I
No,
was
no, no, no.
wrong.
I confirmed it
Okay,
for you.
good,
It's
good.
definitely E3.
Because sometimes, oh yes, it says it right on the DVD case. I should have looked there first. See, like I don't know. I would really like to be a fly on the wall, like time travel back to 1983 after this movie ends and see how people talk about it. Like, I don't know if it's just like retroactively there's Star Wars fans that are just kind of like jaded because of their dislike of the prequels and like retroactively they're like, I don't really like Jedi because it's not as good as Empire. I don't.
No, it's not. It's not like that. I mean, you might have some of that, but here's the thing. I think the prequels have probably overall made people a lot happier with this film and a lot lighter on it because I've read like some of Starlog magazine from right around this time, and people were very down on Jedi.
Really?
I mean,
Interesting.
not a ton of people, but well, not everybody, but there were definitely critics in the science fiction arena that were really down on it. I remember a magazine from like late 80s, like 5 6 years after this came out, where there was a big list of reasons this movie is really inferior to the other two. So that stuff has been historically prevalent since this movie came out.
Oh, okay, interesting. Yeah, see, I've never looked at like critic stuff from the time, so that's really interesting to know. Um,
No, I remember reading that stuff in the '90s when I got my hands on some old Star Logs and being really surprised by it. I was like, I didn't realize people didn't like Jedi. I was reading this stuff in '95, going, I had no idea people didn't like that movie.
yeah,
Okay.
that's interesting. It doesn't surprise me. I mean, people are just generally always, I think, somewhat disappointed with, like we said, the third act of trilogies like this. Not that this was at all prevalent, or at least as prevalent as it is today before this. There were certainly trilogies before this, but this kind of popularized the trilogy thing.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, can you think of a lot of really good third movies?
Not
There really
really.
aren't a lot of them.
I mean, just for me personally, I would count Jedi among the better ones
Oh
myself.
yeah, sure. But I'm not sure you could name one that's better than the first two.
Not off the top of
That's
my
that,
head,
and
no.
especially anything that's a proper trilogy, right?
Right.
Like even as much as I like Back to the Future 3, it's not better than Back to the
Oh
Future.
no,
It's definitely one of the better threes.
right.
It's quite good, but it's not better than one.
And an argument could be made, I suppose, for Last Crusade, but that's not like a fully defined trilogy, three acts like we're talking about with this.
No, I'm with you. I like that one a lot. Now, I know a lot of people at the time thought it was definitely way inferior to the first two again.
I've
And I think
always
that's
been
really
a Raiders of
interesting
the Lost
because
Ark
I don't
guy. Though that's my
think
favorite
it
one.
is, but yeah, and I think that is technically the best of them.
Yeah.
But my favorite is Last Crusade. I just like some of the choices in that.
Oh yeah, Last Crusade's really fun. I love Sean Connery in that movie. He's awesome.
But I'm not a huge fan of that franchise, so I don't know anything. I just that's my favorite of the three.
Oh, I mean, fair enough. If that's the one you like the most. You don't really know. You need to know everything about it to like it. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? So fair enough. I'm not like the biggest Indiana Jones fan in the world either myself, but I like the movies. I think they're fun. I've always liked the design of the ATSTs, the Scout Walkers too, the ones on two legs that we have on the forest moon of Endor here, as opposed to the big AT-ATs from Hoth in Empire.
Yeah, and it's fun to get that kind of variety, just to have all these different details and things. We see those and we go, oh cool. We've got fodder for being fans of things. We can say there's this number and then there's this number.
Yeah, and it gives
Fans love that kind of stuff.
yeah, exactly, and it kind of makes the Empire look like they have some sort of strategy other than just sending incompetents to try to do things and then they fail every time.
You can't tell me that Admiral Akbar can be out of the water for more than 3 hours. That guy
I
really looks like he needs to take a dip every now and again, Dan.
Well, you're right. I mean, the Calamari are a race that do usually live underwater. I don't know too much about how long they could be away from it, but you're right. They are a seafaring race that
Well, they would
look like
have to be,
yes.
Dan. Their name is an appetizer, is a seafood appetizer.
Yes.
Okay, there's nothing funnier than a race that sounds like calamari. Okay, that's hilarious.
Yes. That is true. And I didn't realize that till like years later too, because I'm not a big exotic seafood eater, surprisingly, even though New England is supposed to be known for its seafood.
I mean, I know what calamari is. I've been to a Red Lobster a couple of times.
Yeah.
I've actually been to Red Lobster a lot, but my wife's big into seafood.
Oh,
She
nice.
loves her some calamari.
Man, if you ever make your
In
way
fact,
up here,
in
I can
fact,
take
we
you to a
made
seafood
that.
place.
Oh yeah, well, her favorite thing is catfish.
Oh,
But yeah, we've made that joke before, Dan. We're like, she's about to eat some calamari. I'm like, it's a trap.
uh, I need to use that joke more than I do.
Because it's awesome.
Yeah, it's one of the
It's
best Star Wars
hilarious.
jokes ever.
I just feel like putting those walkers on two legs is a bad idea. They seem like they would be really easy to knock over.
That's true. Yeah, and
Like they look kind of cool, but that just seems like it would be so easy to knock down.
yeah.
They probably built those just because they were like, okay, what could we make that an Ewok could blow up?
That's.
I know.
I think you
We'll
may
put
be
it on
onto
two
something there.
legs. They started with a pogo stick droid, but people were like, I don't know about the pogo stick. Or not even a droid. I don't know about the pogo stick walker where there's just one guy in there pressing a button over and over again and it bounces. He presses one button and it's on a spring and it just bounces
And
forward.
you make a good
That's
point.
all it does.
And you make a good point too. Like we're living in a world where they have anti-gravity bikes and speeders. Like, why do we need these things to have legs and walk? Why couldn't they just float?
I mean, I'm with you. They're pretty cool looking, but you gotta admit, that's dumb.
It is. Especially even within the context of this world. Now that I'm thinking about it, like they could just put, anti-gravity technology on them.
We had those floating droids, and they had guns on them.
Yeah.
They had missiles and things that shot out of them. Those
See,
things are way more useful than these giant. Like, just make those bigger.
right? See, this is why the Emperor lost. He developed stupid things,
That Ewoks could blow up.
and he got stupid people to operate his
Oh,
stupid things.
yes, he did. Yes, he did. But at least he didn't go with the pogo stick walker,
That is
because
very true. I almost kind of wish he did, though. Or at least there'd be some variant of that, because that would be awesome. All right, this is
I
where
am
we get into
push
the realm of
home. It's
ridiculous.
up, 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 and away I go.
The Ewoks just killing those stormtroopers with rocks. I can see why people think that's a little ridiculous.
I suppose, but some of this is inventive.
Yeah, the way they're taking out the walkers is inventive, and I could see working. But just hucking rocks at stormtroopers, I don't think would do anything.
No, that's totally true. But like, we're complaining about not much screen time at all. Like, not a lot's
Right,
going
right.
on right there.
No, that's definitely true. It's not. It doesn't ruin the movie for me. I'm just saying I can
A
kind of.
three out of four traps make sense to me. That ain't bad. No, I'm with you. It's a problem, but
It's not a large problem.
it's a little surprising to me that it got as blown out of proportion as it did. Although I don't know if that's fair. I mean, like, it's just not a thing that ever bothered me. So,
Hey, I mean, the way some people blow things out of proportion on the internet these days, I'm not surprised at all.
but just as loved as these are,
That's true. Yeah.
were we trying so hard to poke holes in it? Is that what I mean? And I'm not saying that like we shouldn't be critical of things. Don't get me. I'm not saying
Right.
Star Wars is like Jesus and we can't. I don't mean that. I'm just saying.
Oh man, I love this lightsaber duel. See, we talked about this with Empire in how the best lightsaber duels is where there's actually character things going on and like they're taking out their sabers for a reason. It's an honor thing. Like
Yeah.
I really like the battle in Empire. That's probably my favorite one. But I like this one almost just as much, but for kind of different reasons. Like I like that Luke is able to hold his own with Vader here and like kind of best him. I don't know. It's awesome.
Well, there's just a lot going on emotionally. Lucas sitting here trying not to fight him.
Yeah, exactly. Whereas in the other fight, it was like he wanted to fight him and take him on head on, but he didn't have the skills. Now that he has them, he can't fight him.
Yeah, but what's great about that is that having the skills he has, he's gonna have the ability to teach him something.
Right, exactly. How cool is that too? Like that's a subversive thing even for this franchise where we have like, the young character who's supposed to be the one being mentored by everyone. Everyone's trying to teach this kid how to live his life, right? And he ends up teaching everyone else something.
Luke has a really good point there that I'm not sure audiences necessarily picked up on in Empire that uh, Vader could have killed him and didn't.
He could have, yeah. You're gonna wonder, like, was it Vader like giving into his rage when he cut his hand off and like he pulled himself back at the last minute and like didn't finish him off?
Yeah.
I mean, who knows?
We always talk about how great the Vader theme is. The Emperor theme is almost as good.
It is. I agree.
It's so haunting. It's one of my favorite things.
Yeah, and that's a theme that's used very frequently in other Star Wars things, and I always find it memorable too. I agree.
Well, I mean, we got it a lot in the prequel trilogy, and that's some score that's just
We
fantastic.
did, yeah.
I guess I think we got it a lot there. I forget.
I think we did, yeah. Whenever there was a scene with like Anakin and the Emperor talking and stuff, that you'd get like little
It was three that
cues
did it a
from it and
lot, but
stuff, yeah.
yeah, that's just where I seem to remember it a lot from.
Especially that scene Probably my favorite scene from the prequels is that scene where they're sitting in that bubble theater in Revenge of the Sith, and like Sidious is telling Anakin the story of Darth Plagueis the Wise, and I think it's playing during that scene.
Yeah,
It's really
yeah,
good.
yeah, it definitely is. Look, Luke gets to play hide and seek with his dad.
And then Vader finds out that he has a sister, and then he'll play hide and go seek with her if he
Yep.
kills Luke.
That, that's right. So, finding out that they're twins, I think it's very interesting that they made them twins.
Hmm.
Um, because we could, we could have gone a direction with this if we wanted to take it a lot darker and we wanted to get away from again the whole sci-fi serial thing. Like they could have, actually now that I'm thinking about it, it's interesting that Vader doesn't know about the sister.
Yes, it is.
Huh. Okay, we'll have to talk about that in a minute. But like, I'm glad that there wasn't some kind of like really obvious foreshadowing thing somewhere in this where Luke and Leia are like comparing birthdays. They're like, oh, that's an interesting coincidence. We're the exact same age.
That's true. What's your birthday, Luke? Oh, wow, we have the
Oh
same
man,
birthday.
I didn't get you anything. I didn't know it was your birthday, but I got stuff. It was my birthday. So how does Vader not know that he has a sister?
The only thing I
And
can.
how does he know about Luke in the first place? If he didn't know about Leia?
Well, the thing that I. The only way I can kind of think about it is, I guess they're both like force sensitive, but Luke was the one that got trained, so that's why he could sense his presence more than Leia, I suppose. But I'm not really sure. That's a good question.
Well, I guess the question is when they were born, did he know about both of them? Or was it, I mean, if you look at the prequels, it's like, okay, he knows Padme's pregnant, so maybe, but he wasn't there for the delivery, so maybe he knew there was one, but had no idea there were two.
Right. Right, exactly.
That'd be my assumption. I think that's actually somewhat consistent.
Yes, it is. I love when Luke just is looking at his hand here, and then
And he's got that evil one black glove thing going on.
oh, it's such good stuff.
You see, at this point he's got a chance at going evil because he's got one black glove, Dan.
It
They're like, we're so surprised when he says he won't turn to the dark side because he's only wearing one black glove, and that's a very evil thing to do.
is, and it
That's Khan, man. I guess Michael Jackson did it too, but he wasn't evil.
no, he wasn't. But I think that's a deliberate choice. Obviously he's had the black garb on the whole movie and the glove. Uh,
Yeah, we're supposed to be quiet. I don't know why I never thought of that. I'm an idiot because this viewing, I'm like, well, yes, of course.
of
This whole
course.
time, of course. Boy, what I wouldn't give for Bane and the Emperor to do a commentary on something.
You throw Vader in there, and
Oh, that's the trifecta
yeah.
right there, man.
Well, I mean, if you mix the Emperor and Vader's voices together, you kind of get Bane. So,
Oh my god, it's brilliant. That's interesting. I
yeah,
guess that's sort of true.
yeah. I never really thought about that until
Oh,
now,
Bane
but
is right. No, I just want to do like Bane for all of his lines.
you are a fool.
Oh, you young fool.
We're totally
Oh
killing the
man.
dramatic tension of this scene, but
Oh,
I'm
now
loving every
then, do
minute of
you understand?
it. And this is the first time we reveal that Sith can shoot lightning out of their hands, which is cool. Um, they explain later on, which I think is cool, that Vader isn't able to do that like the Emperor does because he has too much inorganic stuff on his body. Like he can't project the Force lightning through his hands because he has mechanical hands, obviously, which is kind of
Okay,
cool.
that's kind of an interesting technical way to explain it, but I don't like that.
How come?
Because I much prefer the notion of the Emperor is so far gone and so evil that he has force powers you can only get if you're evil. I much prefer Vader can't do like his not having lightning is, and this isn't in the movie, but I would much prefer something like his not being able to do the lightning thing is one of the clues that he's still got good in him.
That's true. Yeah.
I would much prefer that.
Yeah, and
That should be indicative of that. Because, like I said, when I was talking about like the master thing with Buffy, I really like the idea that like you turn to the dark side more, and you get like crazy evil powers.
that's one of the ideas that I liked from the prequels is that very idea where the Emperor's talking about a Sith that's so in tune with the dark side that he can create life.
Yeah, and that like you shouldn't get to the point where you can do that kind of thing because the cost is too high.
Yes, exactly.
In fact, that's what I always assumed it was with the lightning.
Right. And
Because it just shows us how powerful he is. Yeah, I'm not sure I like that Vader can't do it just because of that, but oh
I
man,
think it kind
here
of
comes the face.
yeah, I think it kind of speaks to Vader's lack of humanity to some degree too.
That's true.
Which is cool. But
But
I'm
you want the Emperor to be more powerful than he is.
oh,
That's
most
all I'm
definitely, yeah. But one of the things I wanted to mention about these special
Oh, they
editions,
cut before we see the face. I forgot about that. They're making us wait for it.
yeah, they
That's good
yeah,
stuff.
they take the mask off when he's about to escape, in the ship. But one of the things I wanted to mention about that scene we just saw, thank God we're not watching the new special editions because I've seen that scene how they re-edited it, and there's
And
like
still no.
there's flashbacks to the prequels, and Darth Vader goes no, and I don't need
Seems like
that.
they're just. That sounds like they're just making fun of it.
I know, right?
Well, I mean, the people working on those have to know how hated that is.
It's like a meme at this point, isn't it?
Also, Star Wars doesn't do flashbacks.
That's true. We talked about
Don't
that ad
do
nauseum last
that.
time too.
One of my well, it's something we talked about the other day when we were doing our podcast on Guardians of the Galaxy.
Yes.
Some people with that movie were calling for more flashbacks for some of the characters and complaining that there wasn't enough about them. And I liked that. I mean, we get one at the beginning for Star Lord, but it opens the film. I liked that that movie didn't feel the need to do flashbacks, and because it was borrowing from Star Wars, people were comparing it to it. I was like, Star Wars didn't feel the need to do that, and it kept some things mysterious until we needed to know them. So yeah, God, special editions don't do that.
Yeah.
Star Wars doesn't do. There's not one flashback in these movies.
Yeah.
There's not one. Or is there?
I don't think so.
And I don't think the prequels do it.
Yeah, I don't think they really do either. From I mean,
Why would
obviously.
there be a flashback? We never get into a person's head like that. I'm using my high pitched, irritated voice. No.
Yes, I mean, I feel the same exact way about it as you. Um, I think just the heavy breathing that Vader does when he picks the Emperor up, and the fact that he makes that choice is indicative of how he feels enough, you know?
Let's be subtle about that kind of stuff, man. We get it. We know what the backstory is.
Right.
And let us use some imagination. When you're telling a story on film, you're already giving us everything visually. So one of the ways we can use our imagination is by imagining some of the things that you tell us about people's backstories. Give us enough, but let us fill in the blanks a little bit. I much prefer watching these not knowing what exactly happens
Right.
and having it spelled out for me. So like I didn't want 1, 2, and 3 in the first place.
Hmm.
Let me just throw that out there. That I always thought doing the prequels was not a great idea because I think these, whether they were great or not, I think these work better without them.
Yeah, I mean,
Not, I mean, who knows? We didn't see me and you don't think they were great. We didn't see great ones, but
yeah, and I think the prequels have a lot of potential. Like if they were executed properly, we've had this talk, and I think we'll have an interesting discussion
you're
about
right.
it.
They have potential. I'm just saying that you know me. I'm always trepidatious about prequels
Right.
anyway.
Yeah. And that's totally fair. They're rarely done all that well. Interesting that we've gotten much better examples of prequels lately with things like First Class and the new Planet of the Apes movies and stuff like that. Prequels are kind of being done really well, at least in movies right now that I've seen of franchises I like.
Okay, so is this the actor that's always been in the suit, or is this somebody else?
This is somebody else. The this is the actor to that used to play the Force Ghost that shows up at the end of Jedi, but they replace him with Hayden Christensen in this version.
Oh, well, first of all, I really wish they hadn't done that because now that I'm looking at him in the face, I'm like, oh, yes, that is that guy.
Yes.
Oh, that's really cool. I didn't know that.
Yep.
And also, I don't understand. I mean, um, boy, I'm thinking about things in my brain right now. Okay, so because that's what you think about things. So, so he's he looks a little younger in the original version of this when we see him in the Force Ghost thing. So you could make the case that he was always younger. Because one of the things I always wondered about the Hayden Christensen thing was I was like, well, they didn't have a younger guy play Obi-Wan.
Yeah, that's true.
I always kind of wondered about that. I was like, that's weird. But then maybe kind of the idea there is supposed to be like we've got I don't know. I don't want to read too far into it. The only way I can reconcile making it Hayden Christensen is Anakin died before Vader was born.
Right, yes.
So
And
we make
that's
him
the
look
argument
like
that
he
Obi-Wan
is.
makes in the first movie, or A New Hope,
Oh,
anyway.
is
Yeah.
it?
Remember, he
Okay.
says that when he's
Well, no, no, no. You're
explaining.
right, and we
Yeah,
talked about that.
yeah,
Yes, I'm sorry. Yes. Well, and that was my argument last movie for saying that he's not straight up lying to Luke.
right,
That
yes.
that in his mind, Vader killed Anakin, and we even get a line earlier in this with Luke and Vader, where he said where Luke says, "Well, then my father is dead."
Hmm.
So there's a lot of philosophizing about that identity thing.
Right.
But then when you get to the end of this, where he's kind of come back full circle into his real identity, right? Like he kind of is Anakin when he finally
That's true, and
does the Emperor. So I want him to be played by that actor.
yeah, that's true. I do really like, in a minute here, we're gonna see Vader's body being burnt, sort of Viking funeral style, and
Yeah.
that's really cool. I've always thought that was very symbolic of, disposing of the bad parts of Anakin Skywalker, all that robotic, dark, evil stuff, and what remains is the spiritual aspect, the good person that he was.
Yeah, well, it's kind of like just destroying machine.
Right, yeah.
Now I forget. Didn't they at the end of Episode 1 do the same thing with Qui Gon
They
to try
did,
to kind of
yes. They burnt his body.
yeah.
That's an
Once
interesting.
again, it's one of those things where like some of this stuff just wouldn't have the same impact if you tried to watch them in order.
Mm,
You know, when we have too many callbacks, that's my problem a lot with prequels. Is you've got callbacks to things, but it happens. We have this retroactive memory of something that got made before a thing that happens in sequence, and so it's meant to be watched later, even though it happened first. But anybody coming to it new is naturally going to want to watch it in the order that the numbers are, and it doesn't work like that.
right, yeah.
Those especially, it doesn't work like that. There's just too much retroactive
Yeah, I mean,
callbacks to
I think an
things.
argument could be made for the Qui-Gon thing, like if this is the burning and ending of the machine part of Vader and the dark side and stuff, Qui-Gon's death is kind of like the first death of, like, the humanity and all things good in the galaxy. That slow death beginning with Episode 1. So I think you can kind of make a symbolic argument for it. I don't know that it's necessarily in the
That's
movie,
yeah,
but
that's a little bit of a stretch only because I didn't see that humanity in that character. But
right. But I
yeah,
think that was
I see what you're
it wasn't
saying.
executed properly.
That's the
I'm with you,
idea.
but I think that's the idea, possibly. Now, these scenes are definitely added in retroactively. This Naboo celebration scene.
Oh no,
Yes.
we did
Yes, we
this.
did.
I've
There's
not
Naboo.
seen this. What? Wait, is that Jar Jar Binks?
I didn't see him. Uh,
Yeah, but we hear him because I saw a subtitle that said "Wisa
oh,
Free."
well, it is him then, yeah.
Holy
And
crap!
this is Coruscant right here.
Oh, could we not do this?
I think
Could we maybe just not do this?
I don't think it makes any sort of sense that the capital of the Empire would be rejoicing that the Empire has fallen, but I don't know.
No, that doesn't make any sense. There'd still be a lot of people loyal to just because the emperor's gone. I just don't. I feel it's more complicated than that. Like, is everybody in the empire really going? Oh man, if only we could get rid of the stupid emperor who's like down on all of it. Like I feel like there are a lot of people benefiting from it.
Oh, most definitely, yeah. Otherwise, it wouldn't exist.
Oh man, that's a big. I'm sorry, I think that's a big insult. I mean, I was gonna try really hard not to talk too much about the prequels and this stuff in this, but they've made it impossible for me. They've done that. They've done that to me, Dan. So anybody that's annoyed at me for going back on that and talking about the prequels, I blame the fact that we watched this version.
I think we talked enough about this movie
I
specifically.
do apologize because I know there's folks that like that, and I don't mean to. I shouldn't be bashing that stuff in other things, but so difficult not to talk about it all because it's interconnected.
Oh,
You
yeah,
know.
definitely. I mean, a clear effort is made to make you think about those movies when you're watching this.
If you love those and you really don't want to hear Dan and I complain about them, you shouldn't watch the commentaries when we do those. You should really stay away from those.
And there he
Oh,
is.
there he is.
See, it wouldn't even occur to me that Luke would know what Anakin looked like when he was that young.
I know, it seems like he just looked at me like, who's that guy?
Exactly.
Who the heck is that?
And I'm not sure if this is on like the new version, but I've seen edited scenes of that too, where Mace Windu and Qui-Gon and like all those guys
What?
show up too.
They just keep going?
I'm
I
not
mean,
sure if it's in the new versions to be fair, but I've
oh
seen.
man.
I hope it's not, but
If
I've
that
seen.
if that were true, Luke, like they would have to elongate that scene so that we could just stop all the music and everything for a second, so that Luke could be like, "Hey Yoda, could you tell me who all these people
I
are?
know, right?
Could you go down the line? It's like we're at a it's like we're at a family reunion at the buffet. Who are all these people? Man,
Excuse me. But
boy,
yeah,
I gotta tell you, they backloaded so much prequel stuff at the end of that last 5 minutes was really kind of tough for me to look at.
yeah, and Sebastian Shaw was the guy who played Darth Vader, apparently.
Wow, Darth Vader was played by an X-Men
Yeah,
villain
that's interesting. The
from a
Black
pre.
the Black
Oh,
King played Darth Vader. How ironic is that?
yeah, Sebastian Shaw. That's all. It's not spelled the same way, but it's or maybe it is.
Yeah, I
But that's
think it
pretty
is.
awesome.
Yeah.
Actually, I think it is.
That's awesome.
Wow, I didn't know that. I will never forget that
I
now.
can't believe they cut Sebastian Shaw's ghost scene out of the movie.
God, why would you do that? You don't mess with Sebastian Shaw. He's got a superpower that's really scary.
Yeah.
You shouldn't mess with that guy, man. He can transmute matter and crap. You don't want to screw with that, man.
See, they should have just CGI'd Emma Frost in there too. It would have been great.
Well, they wouldn't have known that she was dead yet because Days of Future Past had.
Oh man.
Well, what else do you want to say about this, Dan? Wow, that's you know that movie is faster than the running time would lead you to expect.
Oh, I
Uh,
definitely agree. It went by
in fact,
really
I feel like
fast.
this went faster for us than Empire did,
I think it did too. I think Empire is a little bit of a slower paced film, and
but not a slog. It's got to
no,
be like
definitely not. Um, I don't know. I just had a really good time doing these, and I'm
me
glad.
too. I'm so glad we did it. Like I've said before, I was really apprehensive about it. I'm so glad we did it. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, and I can't believe we're already at the end here.
Oh man,
It's a little bittersweet.
it is, isn't it? We shouldn't have rushed this out so fast, Dan. I'm like, oh, that was cool, but now we don't get to do it
I
anymore.
know, right?
I mean, obviously, there's lots of other things we can do and talk about, but like, I've never thought about these on this level before. You know, talking to somebody else that's given it a lot of thought and knows a lot of background and stuff. Like, I learned a lot doing these with you, so thanks a lot. It's just like with Spider-Man. I always learn a lot when I talk to you, but also, I've just never discussed these really with anybody on a story level.
Yeah,
So I'm really glad we did
yeah,
that.
it's an interesting exercise because like it's not something that I've done all that often either. Just because like when you talk about Star Wars with people, it's just kind of a given that everyone perceives them as good movies. You know what I mean? Um,
Yeah, you wouldn't think to dissect them,
right, exactly.
deconstruct them in any way. And I mean, I don't know if I was right about anything I said, but it was fun to look at it, you know, and try to get a sense of it.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's an interesting exercise to look at them and examine them as character pieces, and I think they hold up. I mean, you can see why these movies resonated so much with people.
Well, and they were so accessible. I mean, that's
Oh
the big
yeah.
thing that you always have to go back to with Star Wars is that there really is something for everybody, and there's simple stories, but there's plenty going on to keep your attention and make you think about stuff too. The big kind of yeah, like the big ideas, and that's what fantasy is great for. Is
Yes.
like the really big, broad kind of major good versus evil stuff. That's what fantasy is great for.
Yeah, I completely agree. And uh, it's just such a interesting phenomenon to me that these caught on so well, given like the creative process with them and stuff too. Like me and you have read the original George Lucas script and comic books, and it's so much different than what these ended up being. That it's
Fascinating.
almost a miracle that these movies ended up the way that they did and are so enjoyable.
uh, History with stuff like this that permeates like it does is so incredibly interesting. That like with this and Star Trek both. And I mean, like I like to look at both of them together with this because it would have been easy for both of those things to have failed or to have been totally different things at the beginning. When you look at the history of both of these franchises, just like the fact that they got made the way they did and then that they caught on the way they did, once you look at the nitty gritty of the beginnings of the makings of them, it's astounding that the world looks the way it does because both of those things had such huge profound impacts on the culture.
Oh yeah, and I mean like up until I think very late in the production of A New Hope, Luke was still named Luke Starkiller, which I think would have been not a very good name for that character by the end if they took him the same
Well, and you
direction.
always have to wonder with stuff like that, like if it still would have been the thing it was, just with a small change like that. What would the butterfly effect do when you have a change like that? And the only reason I bring up Star Trek with this is because I've always wondered that with Star Trek. What if the Cage had gone to series instead of them having to make a second pilot, and we had Christopher Pike instead of Captain Kirk,
Well, yeah, that would have been really
and
interesting
and
because that
stuff
was
like
like a
that?
completely
Would it have
different
caught
crew
on?
except for Spock for the most part, right?
Yeah, and then would it have lasted as long? Would it have lasted longer? You don't know. What if TOS had a fourth season? Would we have ever gotten TNG? You don't
That's
know.
true,
And I
yeah.
think it's exactly the same way with Star Wars. What if we had had that original script? I don't think it would have done anything like what it
Oh,
did
I don't think so either.
because I just don't think that the characters would have resonated with people the way that it did. I think it might have made money, but it wouldn't be the mega huge crazy franchise it is now. And imagine the world without Star Wars.
I can't imagine it.
I mean, you can,
Hollywood,
but both of those things so easy to by a thread.
oh
You
yeah.
almost didn't have them the way that they are.
Imagine how profoundly different a place Hollywood would be without this trilogy of movies. I can't imagine it.
Fundamentally a different place for good and bad, right?
Right, yeah. I mean, I don't think comic book movies would be as big as they are without this.
Oh, definitely not. Yeah. I mean, like, just the world would be a totally different place.
Oh, yeah. That would be an interesting exercise to think about sometime. Like a what if question, examine the films of the time, see what have might have caught on without these movies.
Yeah, look at the major things that they affected and try to get it. But I mean, like, it's too complicated to get any real picture of it, right? I mean, you just
Hmm.
have to go to an alternate universe where it wasn't that way because all of these things affect each other too.
Oh,
So I mean,
definitely,
you
yeah.
take one out, but then you still got other things that affect things. You know what I mean? So like, you look at, I don't know, maybe this gets silly, but you look at things like, what if we didn't have Superman but we still had Star Wars, or what if we didn't have either? Things
Right,
like
true,
that.
yeah. That's an interesting question.
What if John Williams hadn't gotten into the scoring business?
Oh, this movie would
If
be
you know,
so different if John Williams
it'd
didn't
be so
score it.
different.
Like,
Yeah, I mean, you look at just all the different hands on it, like the odds of things going the way they went, astronomical,
yeah, it's
of being the success that it was.
yeah, I mean, I can't imagine not just Hollywood and movies and culture without Star Wars. I can't even imagine like my childhood without Star Wars. On
Yeah,
that
and
small
you're
of a level,
talking lightning in a bottle, and we take it for granted.
We do. It's
How many of the things we love were lightning in a bottle? Ninja Turtles. What? Really?
yeah,
That happened the way it did? Lightning in a bottle.
that's very true. Man, it's so crazy to think about.
Well, anyway, on that note, because I think that's a fantastic place to leave this,
It
with
is,
people
yeah.
leave everybody in a place of wonder. Thanks as always for listening. We sure appreciate it. And Dan and I will be back sometime, hopefully in the not too distant future,
Yeah, I hope so too.
to do the Star Wars prequels and lots of other videos for you as well. Dan, thanks, buddy. This is so much fun.
No problem. I had a great time too. Thanks for having me, as always. I appreciate it.
I am Captain
And
Logan,
I'm Dan.
and we will see you next time.